Hello and welcome to the Council meeting of the 4th of December 2023. Before we begin, I advise of a few housekeeping issues. I would like to remind members that under the Council's multi-location meetings policy, this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's website as soon as possible after the meeting. Can I also ask all members, except for Cabinet members and group leaders, that your mics and cameras are turned off until you are invited by myself to speak. Should you wish to speak, would you please indicate by raising the hand function on Teams. If this function ceases to work during the meeting, please indicate in the chat facility your wish to speak. With regard to voting on recommendations, if there is no dissent to a recommendation, I will accept the silence as agreement. Should a vote, however, be required, it is my intention that all members be asked individually for their vote. If during the meeting you have technical difficulties, please let the Democratic Services Officer know as soon as possible. With regard to the business of the agenda, although at the Special Council meeting, when amendments to the Constitution were approved, the order of questions from the public was agreed in line with the appendix to the report, i.e. that public questions are taken before announcements. This was a typographical error, as the intention, as mentioned in the report itself, was that they be taken after announcements. This has since been rectified via the use of the Chief Executive's emergency powers, and therefore, in line with the EP, I will therefore take public questions after announcements, which will mean agenda item 4 will now become agenda item 5. Now let's begin. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, please. Councillor Carroll.
Councillors Rhys Thomas and Robert Fisher.
Thank you. Any other apologies? I believe it's Councillor Ian Buckley and Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it is those two, and my camera's just playing up, so I will go off screen slightly so I can get that to work properly.
Thank you. There are no other apologies for absence. We'll go to the roll call and declarations of interest, please. Chief Executive, would you take the roll call, please?
Okay, if I can ask members to indicate their presence and also if they've got any declarations of interest, and if they do have any declarations of interest, the nature of that interest under the Code of Conduct, please. So we'll start with Councillor Ann Asprey.
Personol a dim byd I ddatgan.
Councillor Julie Aviett.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor George Carroll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Christine Cave.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Charles Champion.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Anthony Ernest. Councillor Anthony Ernest. Okay, I'll come back. Councillor Chris Franks.
Present, and I declare I'm a trustee of Dinas Powys Library, and that is the subject of the polling station report, although as the report came out so late, I haven't had a chance to read all the details, but I have dispensation to speak but not vote.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Russell Godfrey. Councillor Godfrey.
Present and nothing to declare.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Present. I will declare that I'm chair of Butchell's Community Centre, as it is a polling station, but I don't think it's included in this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Present with nothing to declare.
Councillor Nick Hodges. Councillor Hodges with us?
Hello.
Hi.
Present, nothing to declare.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Naomi Marshalsea.
And presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Michael Morgan. Councillor Morgan. Okay, I'll come back. Councillor Jane Norman.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Presennol and nothing to declare.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Joanna Prythrow.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianam.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Carrie Stallard.
And presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Steffan William.
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Councillor Wilkinson's apologies, Chief Executive.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eddie Williams.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Nicholas Wood.
Present and nothing to declare.
And I'll just go back. Councillor Michael Morgan. And can I ask Councillor Anthony Ernest? Otherwise, we'll note that they're not at the meeting. Okay. Councillor Champion, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair. I don't know whether I should say that I'm the member who suggested using the church for SCO within the polling stations.
No, I was at the scrutiny committee, Councillor Champion. I don't think you need to declare that at all. That was part of the debate at scrutiny committee. That would be my advice. Councillor Burnett, do you have your hand up?
Yes, please. I know that Councillor Morgan was online before. Would it be possible for somebody to try and invite him in? He was present at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do that now.
I'm here if you're looking for me. Sorry.
Do you have any?
Apologies,
okay.
I lost my internet connection, but I am fully connected now. I have to apologise.
And do you have anything to declare?
I have
Morgan?
nothing to declare except I've got a dodgy internet, but it'll be all right for a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last call for Councillor Ernest in that case. No. Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Moving on to agenda item 3, to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of September 2023. Could I please ask for your approval?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the minutes.
And I'll second those, Mayor.
Thank you both. The minutes are moved. Agenda item 4 is to receive any announcements. I believe I'm the only person that's got one. I'll try and whiz through it quickly. I've attended many engagements over the last month, from marking the King's birthday in Cardiff with the Royal Gun Salute to marking our armistice service here in the Vale of Glamorgan, along with attending Cowbridge Town service and the primary school service at Barry Cemetery. I was also invited but could not attend so many more town and community services across the Vale that mark this important act of remembrance. However, fellow councillors attended on my behalf, representing the mayoral office and residents of the Vale. I also attended an Understanding Disabilities presentation and a Meet You Army event, which provided attendees with details of the Army's plans in the area for the future. I finished off my recent engagement with a light-hearted and fun show, The Little Shop of Horrors, by Array Theatre Group at Stewart Road Community Centre in Roos, which happened to have been directed by my daughter. A week ago today, I judged my mayoral Christmas card competition, where children all over the Vale sent in their pictures under the theme Kindness. We received over 160 entries, and I will be presenting the winner from Pendoylan Primary School shortly. I have a busy engagement schedule in December, as you can imagine, which I can honestly say I'm looking forward to getting into the Christmas spirit. I am the only one with the announcements today, so we'll move on to agenda item 5, questions from the public. There are 5 questions. Question number 1 comes from Mr. O'Slade to the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services. Councillor Sivanyanam, please, can I have your reply?
Thank you, Mayor. In response, I would like to say that all 23 community centres, including Victoria Park, have disabled toilet facilities that met the requirements of building regulations when they were first installed. Now, subsequent changes to building regulations regarding disabled facilities have been made since then, and a number of facilities when those facilities were last built or upgraded, but these don't apply retrospectively. When any changes are made in the future to these community centres by the council, compliance with the latest building regulations will be obviously an essential part of any scheme. And I would like to say to Mr. Slade, if he's listening to this, that if he has any particular issues about the facilities at Victoria Park, I would invite him to write to me so that we can take a look at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 2 from Mr. R. Curtis to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Leader, Councillor Burnett, can we have your reply, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Curtis. At the Vale of Glamorgan Council, we recognise the importance of our rivers, sea and coastline, and the vital role they play in ecosystems and climate health. The Council's Climate Change Challenge Plan under Project Zero brings together the wide range of work and opportunities available to tackle the climate emergency, reduce the Council's carbon emissions to net zero by 2030, and encourage others to make positive changes. 2 challenges are particularly relevant to blue space. Challenge 5 is to protect and enhance green and blue space, biodiversity and resilience, and improve understanding of the importance. And challenge 11 is to work with partners to reduce the risk of flooding, manage our coastline, and encourage everyone to take a more responsible approach to water use of our natural environment. Through the plan, we've made a number of commitments connected with the health of our water systems and coastline and to support biodiversity, including to improve existing and create more green and blue space through council-led schemes and Section 106 fund to implement the biodiversity forward plan so that we can produce a sustainable urban drainage guidance to implement a flood risk management plan and shoreline management plan and ensure sustainable urban drainage measures are delivered. In addition, we currently work with Natural Resources Wales to monitor bathing water quality. The Council also gives consideration to the National Marine Plan in its planning processes. The Marine Plan identifies opportunities for the sustainable development of Wales's seas by guiding new development and related decisions, both inshore and offshore, and is referenced in the Council's Replacement Local Development Plan preferred strategy. In accordance with national planning policy, the Council will consider the land use implications of the Marine Plan as part of the plan preparation process. As part of the evidence base for the Replacement Local Development Plan, an integrated sustainability appraisal scoping report has been prepared, which recognises a number of marine and coastal issues that will need to be considered through the RLDP. And furthermore, the habitat regulations assessment of the RLDP preferred strategy considers whether any aspects of the RLDP could result in likely significant effects on the special areas of conservation in coastal areas at the Severn Estuary and Dunraven Bay. These ISA and HRA processes will help to shape the detail of the deposit RLDP to ensure that new development does not result in adverse effects on the integrity of these important coastal sites. We would like to draw your attention to the work of NRW, Natural Resources Wales, whose regulatory responsibilities cover a number of areas that are directly related to water and ocean environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Lisbonette. Question number 3 is from Mr. D. Clark to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. It's the Leader again, please, Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Clark. The process of public consultation in respect of this site has been in accordance with the relevant legislation, and there have been wide-ranging opportunities for the public to comment and engage in the process, which the Council welcomes. Members have been provided with briefing sessions and progress updates, and there have been regular correspondence streams with interested groups. The applications remain under assessment and will potentially be reported to the Council's Planning Committee in the coming months. Consequently, and given the statutory processes to be followed, it's not considered that there is a requirement at this time for a Vale Council organised public meeting to discuss the applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Question number 4 is from Mr. Wallace to the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services. Councillor Sivanyanam, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Wallace. I have to say, first of all, that Mr. Wallace, that what you suggest in your question is not accurate. The draft preferred strategy for the Replacement Local Development Plan was approved at full council on the 20th of November. That's only 2 weeks ago. And the preferred strategy consultation is due to commence on the 6th of December and will run for 10 weeks. The draft preferred strategy refers to becoming an age-friendly Vale, and this principle is, I would say, a central thread of the strategy. The key themes, vision and objectives have an age-friendly Vale at their core, particularly in respect for our homes for all, improving mental and physical health and well-being. And this thread goes through also to fostering diverse, vibrant and connected communities, embracing culture, promoting active and sustainable travel choices. Part of the vision is that housing growth has delivered homes which cater for all, including affordable homes for older persons, housing and contributing towards diverse and cohesive communities where residents can maintain their independence. Subsequently, and through the deposit draft of the plan, these themes and objectives will be translated into detailed policies. The deposit draft will also be subject to public consultation, which is scheduled for early 2025. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Question number 5 is from Mr. Elmack to the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and Welsh Language. Councillor Birch, please, can I have your reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mack, for your question. Your question is highly relevant, coming at a time, as it does, when considerable work is being undertaken in setting the budget for the Council for next year. Anyone who has read the recent reports that have been presented to Cabinet, Council and the various scrutiny committees will know that we need to review all of our services. The way Arts Central operates is no different. I can therefore assure Mr. Mack that the future use and the direction of the gallery will be considered fully.
Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 6. This is the notice of motion submitted by Councillors Dr. Ian Johnson and Mark Hooper, bus service in the Vale of Glamorgan. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the motion in the name of myself and Councillor Hooper about bus services in the Vale of Glamorgan, and in particular the Barry Docks public transport interchange. The ambition for a bus station at Barry Docks train station predates my election to the Vale of Glamorgan Council. It was first proposed back as far back as 2006 and has been incorporated in the Local Development Plan 2011-26 and the Local Transport Plan 2015-30. The Barry Docks bus station was finally delivered earlier this year with just one major problem. There were no buses using it. I'm bringing forward this motion for debate tonight so that councillors can better understand what has gone wrong and, more importantly, how we can resolve this situation in a genuinely beneficial manner. I'm sure there will be party political points made. I'm certainly going to query the priorities of the Labour Welsh Government for their own stated public transport agenda, but my aim tonight is to shine a light upon the situation. The policy position in favour of Barry Docks bus station is simple and, as far as I'm aware, well supported across the political spectrum. It makes sense, in theory, for Barry to have a location at which you can change mode of transport from train to bus and vice versa. The train line runs along the south of the town, but aside from the bus stop at the Barry Hotel on Broad Street, there's no obvious connection between trains and buses. That means you have to walk around 10 minutes uphill from Barry Docks towards the centre of town, or there's quite a faff to get from a bus in the north of town to a train station to go either eastwards towards Cardiff and further afield, or westwards towards Roosevelt at Major and Bridgend. So why is it not been possible to deliver on this long-standing and seemingly sensible policy? We're told there are practical issues at play. It was expected that the train station was a natural terminus for buses which currently stop at Morrison's. It's a few roundabouts further on. However, Cardiff Bus clearly disagree and did not timetable any services to use the new station when they revamped their timetable in September. The other bus provider in Barry, Adventure Travel, had apparently agreed to use the station as part of the 88 bus service between Barry and Penarth, but that route was cancelled in July after Welsh Government ended the bus emergency subsidy that was introduced during COVID. Councillors need to understand at what point it was clear that neither Cardiff Bus or Adventure Travel would be providing a frequent service to Barry Docks. I will at this point note the introduction of the B3 service in January 24. However, I understand there will be 7 services per day, and the wider service around Barry is being reduced from 8 buses to 7, so a reduced service in general. As Barry Docks has 8 trains per hour during the day and will only have 7 buses per day, I do wonder how many people will use that service, bearing in mind that a 5-minute train delay may mean a 55-minute wait in an unmanned station with no facilities. One of the reasons given for the lack of enthusiasm in bus services at Barry Docks is the impact of COVID-19 on passenger numbers. But COVID started in 2020 and the bus station was built in 2023. At what point, if at all, was the change in bus passenger numbers due to COVID discussed by officers in development of the bus station? The bus station is part of the Metro Plus scheme funded by Welsh Government in the Cardiff Capital Region. It's one of very few meaningful improvements we'd like to see in the Vale of Glamorgan. So what proper scrutiny of the decision-making process has there been, or will there be? How will that information be cascaded to us as local councillors and our residents who use the public transport network locally? This motion calls for a report which considers what can be done to retrieve the situation. We all want a public transport system that works, but we need Welsh Government funding for proper bus services, not reduced funding as they have done this year. What services would we like to see in future? What can the Council, the Capital Region and Welsh Government all contribute within their powers and funding to develop public transport in Barry and the wider Vale? I look forward to this debate, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Collins, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to second that motion, and I'd also like to speak on it, if I may. While the bus station is in theory a good idea and a much needed part of infrastructure in this town, it is a disappointment that the council failed to reach an agreement with bus companies for services to use it prior to its completion. Instead, we have seen services terminated, routes changed, and complaints about reliability. Public transport in this town is becoming a joke. The bigger joke is the council building new homes in an area deeply affected by the termination of the 88 bus, an area that is not easily accessible without a car or a reliable bus service. The Bendricks. The council has built new council houses there, proudly bragging about this in the local press, but failing to ensure the public transport links in place when construction started remained in place when construction finished. Typically, residents of council homes tend to be on lower incomes and less likely to have access to a car, therefore leaving them reliant on public transport. These new residents, as well as established residents of the area, now face difficulties carrying out tasks we all take for granted. Going to work, taking children to school, going shopping or to medical appointments, or just visiting friends. There is a feeling of isolation among residents, and the general opinion is that the council has let them down and just does not care. When this bus terminal was being built, it was understood the 88 would stop there. This now will not happen. Although there is a new bus service due to use it in the new year, it is not enough. More needs to be done to help the residents of my ward live the life they have every right to and fully deserve. The council needs to show its commitment to residents and prove that it cares. To borrow a line from a famous film, if you build it, they will come. Well, I certainly hope they do. The council needs to do everything in their power to make this happen.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Carroll next, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And may I also thank Councillors Johnson and Hooper for bringing forward this motion this evening. The Conservative Group welcomes this motion, and we are happy to offer it our support. Bus services provide vital transport links between our communities, and they are relied upon by many of the most vulnerable people within our society. It is therefore a matter of deep regret, Madam Mayor, that Labour ministers in the Senedd have slashed the support available for bus services in Wales. This has resulted in bus fares across Wales increasing by 6.3%, as well as a reduction in the services in operation. By contrast, in England, under a Conservative government, a £2 fare cap has been introduced. This, combined with other measures, has resulted in fares in England going down by 7.4% once London is excluded from the figures. Madam Mayor, this authority has a leading role to play in supporting the provision of bus services across the Vale of Glamorgan. Now, I am of course not privy to any conversations that the Labour cabinet has with their colleagues in the Senedd, but I would urge them to make the strongest possible representations on this matter. Given the situation that we face in the Vale, particularly regarding the transport interchange, which I will move on to shortly, we can either conclude that they have not prioritised this matter, or that if they have, any representations have fallen on deaf ears. It's lamentable, frankly, that while funding for bus services was slashed by Labour ministers in the Senedd, £40 million was spent imposing blanket 20-mile-per-hour speed limits across Wales. And they're also spending £120 million on 36 more politicians. It's a question of priorities, and for too long, Labour priorities, be it those of ministers in the Senedd or those of this Labour Council, have been the wrong ones. And this takes me on to the Barry Transport interchange. As Councillor Johnson said, and indeed I concur with his comments, it's quite clear that there is cross-party support for the principle of the interchange. But it's laughable that the provision of bus services was not at the forefront of this Labour Council's thinking when developing the facility. It is a shambolic farce, and that is putting it kindly. There are not words to describe the incompetence that led to this situation. And it's ridiculous that for months we've been talking about a £3 million bus interchange with no buses. It is the result of a lack of leadership and joined-up thinking from a Labour authority that only last month ranked its performance as good. The people of the Vale would beg to differ. So as I said, I'm happy to support this motion. The farce must end, and it's time for this Labour Council to get a grip. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Carroll. Deputy Leader, Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm going to start with the fact about the motion itself. Now, the majority of this motion contains facts that actually are a statement of fact and a given, and are therefore do not need debate. However, I will go on to just give a bit of a reminder and a bit of an update where we are with bus services, because despite myself as Cabinet Member sending out updates, that doesn't seem to have been either not read or not understood. So, as we are aware, due to reduced funding being provided by Welsh Government, as we move then from the Bus Emergency Scheme, commonly known as the BES, and that was the emergency bus funding that was provided throughout COVID to support the bus companies. We move from there then to the Bus Transition Fund, which is the BTF, and that's the funding that we have at present, and this is for the current financial year only. So with that then, the Council, along with other local authorities in the South East Wales region, which is how we operate as a region for those who are not aware of that, they've recently gone out to tender for services that operators have identified will be withdrawn when the BTF funding for 2023-24 runs out. Because I said that was a transition fund, and it's still with all the work there to try and get bus numbers back up to pre-pandemic levels. Now, this includes services 303, 304, 89A, and 93, 100, the 305, which is, as I mentioned in my update that I sent out, that's the new streamlined 89AB service. The 320, 321, B1, B2, B3, and X2, and those are the ones that serve the Vale. However, a regional decision will be taken as to what services can be continued or provided with a view to tender prices submitted, and then what funding is available from both Welsh Government and local authorities. And then details of this will be available in the new year. And then services that are funded will begin in April 2024. So what that means is this is still very much a moving issue around bus funding, about the transition funding, and what we're actually doing as an organisation and the South East Wales region, and along with Welsh Government as well. So really, some difficult decisions do lay ahead across Wales on what bus services can be funded from for April 24. But we as a council are doing all that we can to ensure as much of the current bus network as possible remains. And as I've reiterated before in questions and in my updates, our officers are working on a daily basis, day in, day out, to make sure that we are involved in those discussions and actually working with the bus companies themselves and other local authorities to actually do the best that we can, because public bus services are very much at the forefront of this council. With regards to a report on Vale transport interchange, due to all that sort of ongoing work, I would say that a 3-month is too tight of a timescale for that report. I believe it needs actually a 6 months, and that'll be once the new network has been implemented and it's settled down. And then alongside that, as we're aware, the B3 service is due to run in and out of the interchange from January, and that we've already announced. All of this then will allow officers to look at potential amendments to the bus service in order to serve the interchange further. And that, again, is at the very forefront of our work and what we want to achieve. And it's that reminder, I suppose, that the interchange is for that multitude of public transport services. It's not just bus, it's train, bus, taxi, and we've also got secure bike keep locks, as well as electric charging points. And
30 seconds.
Sorry?
Sorry, Councillor Brooks, 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will continue to liaise with Transport for Wales for all that data, which will then form part of that report when it's due. And therefore, I cannot support this motion here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Marnie, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's quite understandable why the ruling administration wouldn't want a report or debate on this. Fairly obvious. I mean, I've just heard a list of a bunch of bus services that run in the Vale. None of them are really applicable to the link here. You've managed to inveigle one company to call in there 7 times a day. Well, even if massively bus subsidies were reintroduced, which could well be unlikely, I'd have thought, to be honest with you, why have you built 4 bus shelters? You know, unless you've got a bus calling in there every 5 minutes, you know, why have you spent so much money on 4 bus shelters when all you've got is 1 bus service calling in there 7 times a day? Even if you doubled that, you don't need 1 bus shelter, surely. I mean, we're not talking Cardiff Central there. It's a handy bus station, train station, Barry Dock, but you know, you don't have thousands of people trooping off to catch buses dispersing all around the Vale and Barry or whatever. I note later on there's an item about the Chief Executive's emergency powers, and I note a large overspend due to delay for the contractors being able to gain access to the site. Well, that needs to be discussed. That's a new one on me, to be honest. I'd missed that before. How on earth can that possibly have happened as well? Looking like as if it's cost a couple of £100,000. So of course there has to be a debate, and it's about time this council stops shutting down debate. We need to discuss every last thing. And as I say, 2.7 million for 4 bus stops, when it doesn't look as if we barely need one, to be honest with you. And one last part in short, another thing needs to be discussed. I've opinion time and time again about the virtue signalling of this council, of the declaration of climate emergency after climate emergency. You know, just to add insult to injury, every evening I go past there and every night I go past that bus station, the lights are blazing in every single bus stop, unused bus stop. So, you know, even down to that extent, the hypocrisy of this council knows no bounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Franks next, please.
Thank you. I've listened carefully to this debate, and I still don't understand how this bid was submitted and accepted. From my experience, there has to be a huge amount of evidence provided to the civil servants in Cardiff. You've got outline business cases and other types of cases and final reviews and that type of thing. How on earth did this slip through? We've heard about us having to I don't know. Did we direct the bus company to use the hub? Were there inadequate discussions with other bus companies, specifically Cardiff Bus? How did this go so catastrophically wrong? That has not been answered tonight, and I'd welcome some more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Councillor Hooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be very brief. And I'm just picking up on Councillor Brooks's contribution, and I think she made a really useful point that we should potentially consider. Bronwyn mentioned that there should be a 6-month review. So this motion suggested a review now. What I'm going to propose is an amendment which I think should gain cross-party support to change it for an amendment in 3 months' time, which is exactly what the Cabinet member asked for. So I'll be very surprised to see the Labour group voting against that, but you never know. Thank you.
Just to say, Madam Mayor, that I'd be happy for an amendment, an alteration to the motion to make that a review within 6 months, if that's appropriate to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Mayor. To assist, a member, in this case Councillor Johnson, may alter a motion which he's given notice, which is the case in this instance, with the consent of the meeting. So if the meeting consents to that, that amendment can be made, or alteration can be made.
Thank you. So we shall be talking on the amendment, I think, now.
Well, it's an alteration. So the indication is, as it's been referred to by Councillor Brooks, I would ask members, if they're not in agreement to that alteration, to raise their hands. That way you'll be able to identify whether the meeting consents to that alteration.
Point of order.
So,
yes,
Mayor, can I assist further? So the alteration hasn't been agreed by the meeting. So
I'm
therefore,
raising a point of order here.
I'll let you speak.
Oh, thank
before
you.
Me.
Thank you. Well, my point of order is surely it's up to the mover of the motion to accept an amendment to their motion. The mover has accepted the amendment to the motion, and therefore can present that motion as amended, and you vote on the amendment first, and then the substantive motion. It doesn't need a meeting of people who may have another agenda to agree or not, whether curiously they wish to have that amendment presented in front of them.
Yes, can you advise, please?
I anticipated that was going to be the point, but so because the meeting has not agreed to the alteration, the proposal made by Councillor Hooper cannot be dealt with by way as an alteration, but it can be put forward as an amendment to the motion. So that would require seconding to be an amendment before the meeting tonight. I hope that also addresses Councillor Williams's query.
I second that amendment.
Is everybody in agreement to that?
We have a vote on it, don't we? We talk on the amendment now.
Yeah, you don't need people to agree whether I second amendment or not. You put it to a vote.
Yeah, so Mayor, just to assist, so that becomes an amendment before the meeting now. So the amendment being, as per the motion, save for the last part of the last bullet point, referring, if I'm correct, Councillor Hooper, referring to a report within 6 months. But I'm sure Councillor Hooper will correct me if I've made an error in that regard.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So, Councillor Lynch-Wilson, please.
Sorry, I think my hand has gone up by accident.
Councillor Morgan, please.
Yes, now I was only going to come back on one point. I put my hand up before you were discussing the amendment, but I have a slight amendment to put forward as well. Looking at the bullet point of the motion, the third bullet point says the council supports the provision of a sustainable network of buses across the Vale, recognising people's needs and not just a commercial demand-led service. I would like that to be carried forward into the report that they're requesting, because speaking for those of us who live out in the rural Vale, we have rather different needs out here. And in particular, if I want to go to Barry from Peterston on a bus, I can't. There is no direct bus from Peterston to Barry, but the whole thing needs to be re-examined. And I just wondered, if we're going to the trouble of a report, if we can amend the request for the report to include the consideration of a sustainable network of buses across the Vale and not just Barry. So that's my suggestion, an amendment to the motion.
Mayor, if I can assist there.
Yes,
so
please.
With the consent of Councillor Hooper and the seconder of that amendment, that further amendment can be agreed, but if Councillor Hooper and the seconder do not agree to that amendment, that would form a further amendment which would be considered after Councillor Hooper's amendment, if indeed it's seconded. So I think that the sequence is to ask Councillor Hooper and the seconder of Councillor Hooper's amendment whether they agree to that additional amendment.
I agree to Councillor Morgan's amendment.
And can we also ask the seconder of Councillor Hooper's amendment? That was Councillor Williams.
I agree with the amendment, though I do not understand the Byzantine and almost Stalinist way in which this is being conducted. Anyone would think that they don't want debate to happen. But yes, for the record, I agree with the amendment.
So for clarity, the amendment is as specified by Councillor Hooper, combining the further amendments by Councillor Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burnett, leader, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I must be honest, I think that the whole motion is mostly stating the obvious. It's actually noting things that have already happened. And, you know, I hope that we get the opportunity to go back to the original motion, because there are some points I'd like to make, not least the fact that, to my knowledge, this whole discussion about the transport interchange has been discussed at least 4 times, to my knowledge, in wider areas. But I think what I would say is that the crux of this, where it says the council requests a report to be published and debated by council, I don't care whether it's 3 months or 6 months. Actually, if you want to have a proper debate on this, you take it to scrutiny. My understanding is it's already on the list to be discussed at scrutiny, and if it isn't, then the right thing to do is to put in a matter for consideration, and then everyone, including the public, can contribute to that discussion. And then you can have all the information about the bus funding, because as we know, buses were privatised many years ago. The only bus services that are safe are the ones that are commercially viable. If you took away the funding that this council puts into bus services, there would be none west of Barry. Those are the level of conversations that we are currently having. So I have absolutely no hesitation in saying that I will not be supporting this amendment, and I would actually move that we go to a vote.
Have Councillor Carroll, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. For my part, I'm happy to support the amendment. I must admit to being rather bemused that the leader and the administration appear to be resisting it so strongly. Just a few moments ago, in the cabinet member's comments, she seemed to suggest that her concerns regarding the motion were the fact that a report shouldn't be brought forward immediately. We should wait 6 months. Councillors Hooper and William appear to have agreed to compromise on that point and have suggested that a 6-monthly report would be agreeable to them, and it indeed is agreeable to us. So I'm frankly flabbergasted that now the administration is saying they don't want a report at all. It makes absolutely no sense. In my initial comments, Madam Mayor, I said that this was a farce. I didn't think it could possibly get any more farcical, but indeed it has. And the only conclusion I can draw from this, and it follows on from our meeting last week, where the ability of members to scrutinise decisions that happen and are taken by this administration was curtailed. This is an administration, a Labour administration, that does not like scrutiny, does not like debate, and is trying to shut it down. And that's deeply regrettable. In terms of full council, Madam Mayor, it's perfectly reasonable and legitimate that a matter of this magnitude should be for consideration of the whole council and not just the scrutiny committee. Not all members sit on scrutiny committees. Members who don't sit on scrutiny committees don't have the full opportunity to scrutinise decisions. And given the amount of public money that we're talking about with this and the farce that we've seen to date, I think it would be entirely sensible for us to benefit from the experience of all members of this authority when we scrutinise this matter. So I'm happy to support the amendment. And frankly, it's astonishing, farcical and laughable that the Labour administration are trying to vote it down, because Councillor Burnett said she believes that the only issue with the debate, first and foremost, is that it's stating the obvious. Then the cabinet member made the comment and stated that the problem was with the timing of the report. That's been addressed, yet they're still voting against it. It makes no sense. It's just hiding from scrutiny, and that's not in the interests of anybody.
Point of clarification, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I did not say I did not want to report. I said it should go to scrutiny, not to council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Marnie?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'd vote against the amendment simply because I think a huge inquiry and debate needs to happen now. There's been a very good point raised here already, even briefly, in that what discussions were held between Vale Glamorgan officials and cabinet members with Welsh Government for justification for this, and what justification was put in front of that for gaining such a sum of money. We have a cabinet member who repeatedly has to be reminded when quoting that it was actually money from the capital region, that it's actually taxpayers' money, and or whoever contributes to the tax burden of this country contributes to that. It's not as if it's free money. And we've just heard of Liz Burnett quite forcibly stating that, of course, the only bus services that are viable are commercially viable bus services. Yeah, that's exactly the point, isn't it? The point is, if it was commercially viable, bus companies would be falling over themselves. They'd have that place so rammed full of buses that you wouldn't be able to move there right now. So they obviously don't think it is commercially viable. Whether they will in the future is another matter. So why spend £2.7 million on 4 bus shelters where you got the lights blazing all night with not a vehicle in sight? I'd have thought that's fairly obvious, and that's fairly obvious that when the Vale of Glamorgan were putting in for this bid, they should have been providing the evidence that there was the need for this. And I'm all for transport infrastructure, but not at huge cost when you can't get commercially viable bus services or companies to use them. Otherwise, that's a waste of £2.7 million, isn't it? So I'm be voting against the amendment because I want that to be discussed and a report now. And if we have one in 6 months, well, that's fine as well, isn't it? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Perks, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second the leader that we move to the vote, please.
Councillor Lloyd-Selby, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It might be helpful for members if I clarify, as the Chair of Environment and Regeneration, that in fact it's already been agreed that this matter should form part of the forward work programme for the Scrutiny Committee. So we have already given that commitment that we will bring a report to Scrutiny, which is the appropriate place for this issue to be considered, and that report will be brought next year. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I know I've already spoken, but I actually do think I need to put a point of clarification in here. The words that I've used have been twisted and misinterpreted. The very fact I mentioned about 6 months is because, as Councillor Lloyd Selby has just clarified as well, is the fact that this is on a forward work programme for scrutiny. I was not making an amendment to the motion, and I stand by the fact that I will not be supporting that motion. I know we called for the vote, but I thought I just need to clarify my words before they're twisted as they have been here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that I've been working on the buses for a while now on public transportation. I've actually brought some points to scrutiny for next year. I've been discussing with the leader as well about public transportation and the bus services. I'm going to be bringing it to a scrutiny committee that I sit on, and also one that I don't sit on. So just to clarify a couple of points that Councillor Carroll brought, you can bring points to scrutiny committees you don't sit on, you can speak at them as well. So I think that some of the points you raised are a little bit of moot points there. As much as you can bring points to council, it is also very important that you bring points to scrutiny committees as well.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just confirming that nobody else wishes to speak on the amendment, because I have a right of reply at the close of the debate on the amendment. So I'm just confirming, because I've seen some hands go up and go down.
Yes.
No? Okay. So obviously, I think we'll have to... You see, I mean, as Councillor Perry's putting a hand up, is he speaking or not?
Councillor Perry, will you be speaking now? Before Councillor Johnson? Yep.
I could. I don't mind. I accidentally put something on my keyboard and it touched the button, unfortunately. It's just very, very quickly. So I have a few questions which are more general, which go back to the main motion, but there is potentially an amendment. And I wonder if the people who are proposing it, a bit like Michael Morgan said, would like to consider, maybe we need to think in the report whether consideration of how people get to the bus stops, particularly in rural areas, would be included in that report. And I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, I'll be looking to, whatever happens here, I'll be looking to do a summing up of the final debate when we reach that point. I believe that the amendment brought forward by Councillor Hooper and Councillor William was put forward in good faith, because it appeared to me, listening, that Councillor Brooks was suggesting that something would take. Well, I'll happily go back and listen to the words said from Councillor Brooks, because Councillor Brooks and Councillor Bennett both said that the original motion seemed largely factual, but that a report couldn't be really possibly be brought forward within such a short period of time. 3 months and 6 months appeared to be what was suggested there as an olive branch. Clearly, we have misunderstood what the Labour Party are talking about, which perhaps is an obvious problem that many of us face in the chamber, because what is said is not quite what happens. I mean, for example, it could be described as an ambitious, forward-thinking project that can help make sustainable travel more comfortable, convenient and appealing. I'm not sure that's quite what's going to be. I will point to the length of time that reports take to reach scrutiny. I once put in a consideration request regarding libraries. That took more than a year to reach the Learning and Culture Committee between 2019 and 2020. In October 2022, the Corporate Performance and Resources Committee asked in its meeting for a report on the overspend with regard to Oracle. 14 months later, that has not been received. We might well be something sat on a forward work programme, but that doesn't mean to say that it will get to anybody very quickly. Now, we were offered an olive branch of a sick report within 6 months. We've since been told by the Labour Party that's not actually what they meant to say, and that's not what they agree with. Fine, let's have a vote on it, because as far as I can see, you're just ducking away from scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. We will go to a vote. Can I just ask the Chief Executive or the Monitoring Officer, could you clarify what this vote is on, please?
Thank you, Mayor. What I've got is that the report, it's as set out in the motion, but the report should be in 6 months, not 3 months. And correct me if that's incorrect. and also that as part of that report, it should cover the wider issue of bus services across the Vale. And that's paraphrasing, apologies.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Now we will go to the vote, please. Can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, bear with me. So we are talking about the amendment. So we need members to indicate whether they are against the amendment or in favour of the amendment as set out. So can I start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please? Or actually, I should say, you can also abstain, obviously. Councillor Anne Asprey.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Julie Aviett.
Against.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Against.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Against.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Against.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Yes, I'm for the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Burnett.
Against.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
For.
Councillor George Carroll.
For.
Councillor Christine Cave.
For the amendment.
Councillor Charles Champion.
For the amendment.
Councillor Janice Charles.
For the amendment.
Councillor Millie Collins.
For the amendment.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
For the amendment.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
For the amendment.
Councillor Chris Franks.
For.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Against.
Councillor Russell Godfrey.
For the amendment.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
For.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Against.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Against the amendment.
Councillor William Hennessy.
For the amendment.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
For.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Against.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Against.
Councillor John. Thank you.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Johnson.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
Against.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
Against.
Councillor Naomi Marshalsea.
And I'd have been against.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
For.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Against.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Against.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Against.
Councillor Ian Perry.
For.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
Against.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianam.
Against.
Councillor Caris Stallard.
Yn erbyn. Against.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Steffan William.
Obliged.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Against.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Against.
And Councillor Nicholas Wood.
For the amendment.
Okay, thank you. I've trotted that up as being 28 against the amendment and 21 in favour of the amendment. So the amendment fails.
I agree.
So Mayor, you're back now to considering the motion as set out. And I don't know what the timeline is for doing that. I'm assuming we've got time.
Yes, the time scale is up until 7:15 because of the 45 minutes allowed for an amendment.
Thank you. If anybody wishes to speak, we'll be going to a vote very soon. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you. One of the reasons I didn't vote, well, I voted against the amendment, but I'm also going to vote against this motion. And the reasons are quite clear. Probably been stated that some of the bullet points in this are statements. And if it wasn't for the rhetoric that was already being put by some members, then I would have been happy to agree with these. It's just that there's an indication if we agree with this motion tonight, it's almost implying that the council currently isn't already doing those things that are on this motion. So that's the reason why I'm going to vote against.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Deputy Leader, Councillor Burnett, please.
Oh heavens, I've been demoted.
Oh, sorry, yes, Leader.
Right, so just one last point. We talk about this pie in the sky buses that we can just pay for and we can do, and you know, part of the motions talks about that we support the provision of sustainable network of buses across the Vale, and you know, there's no issue, and there's no need for debate on that, as it's, you know, it's a complete statement of fact. But I think we have to recognise the council's ability to subsidise buses linked to the money available and the money received from government. And I think that if you look at the autumn statement that's just gone, unless something drastic changes, there is no extra money coming down from UK government into Welsh government for anything other than the very basics. So we can all pontificate, but we have to look at where the priorities are, where we're going to spend the money and how we're going to get that. That is a discussion already ongoing. So yet again, have a proper discussion at Scrutiny Committee where all interested parties can speak, officers can speak, and we can, you know, you can even get people in from the bus companies. There is absolutely no point bringing it to council where it's a very narrow debate. I will be voting against yet again.
Councillor Johnson, please. Sorry, Councillor Perry.
Good evening again. Yeah, obviously there is need for more discussion and more member input into bus services in the Vale. And obviously I have lots of questions that I could ask on bus services, including why wasn't a fully enclosed interchange built at Barry Docks? And I might ask, why does the B3 just drive past Barry station and when there's no bus stops? Once a bus stop at Barry Station for the B3 be kind of convenient, because then you could catch a bus from one station to the other station. So yeah, I think there needs to be more discussion. I think there's a lack of discussion in scrutiny, as the leader has said at previous meetings, and it would be a shame not to have more reports and more information and try and encourage more discussion.
Councillor, sorry,
in full council and out council.
Sorry, we need to go to a vote, but I need Councillor Johnson to
Fine
speak.
There. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm using my right to reply at the end of the debate. In some respects, it was a very interesting debate, in as much as what it did cover and as much as what it didn't. I welcome Councillor Carroll's support, although it is slightly disingenuous because, of course, at the same time, Wales has not gained from the funding from the Barnett formula that HS2 would have provided for us and would have allowed us to establish a far better public transport network. It was interesting to hear from Councillor Brooks and Councillor Burnett about the services and the challenges to the services that we face under the current circumstances. What we've not heard, though, tonight, Mayor, what we've not heard is about the decision-making process behind the Barry Dock public transport interchange and spending £2.7 million on a bus station there, because what we've heard is about the challenges. Those challenges were present at the start of this year. COVID didn't affect us this year, it started to affect us in 2020. The business case was set out, the decision was made, those things were spent. And to quote Councillor Brooks again, this is an ambitious, forward-thinking project that can help make sustainable travel more comfortable, convenient and appealing. There's nothing personal about this. I look forward to further debate on this, but you haven't answered the questions that really people want to know, which is, why was this built when all of the problems are stacked up against the bus industry at present? I was at a public meeting recently where I heard from the horse's mouth from Cardiff Bus and from Adventure Travel about the issues that they're facing. And what still sits there for all of us, I think, listening to this, is, why was this go forward when there were clearly so many problems with it? So many people have said tonight that they note the statements that are part of this. There's a statement, and they ask for a report that comes to council, which is the full decision-making body of this authority. So instead of things going to scrutiny committees, I welcome scrutiny. I welcome scrutiny committees' involvement in this, and I'm sure there'll be lots to learn from there. But we don't just get those answers from officers. Political responsibility means that people in charge, the leader, the deputy leader, have to answer those questions. And tonight, those questions have not been answered, and that's why I will be voting for my motion tonight. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Can I ask for a recorded vote as well, please?
Yes. Yes. Do I have 6 members, please? Yes. Yes, I have. Thank you. I'll ask the Chief Executive, and we will go to a vote on the original motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me. So same principle. If you can advise if you are for the motion as set out on your papers, against, or if you wish to abstain. So I'll start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please.
For the motion.
Councillor Julie Aviat.
Against.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Against the motion.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Against.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Against.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
For the motion.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Against.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
For.
Councillor George Carroll.
For.
Councillor Christine Cave.
For.
Councillor Charles Champion.
For.
Councillor Janice Charles.
For.
Councillor Millie Collins.
For.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
For.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Against the motion.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
For the motion.
Councillor Chris Franks.
For.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Against the motion.
Councillor Russell Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
For.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Against.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Against.
Councillor William Hennessy.
For the motion.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
For.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Against.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Against.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Susan Lloyd-Selby.
Against.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock-Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Julie Lynch-Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
For.
Councillor Naomi Marshalsea.
And I've been against.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
Abstain.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Against.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Against the motion.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Against.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Against.
Councillor Ian Perry.
For.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
Against.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianum.
Against.
Councillor Caris Dallard.
Yn erbyn. Against.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Steffan William.
O blaid.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Against.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Against.
And Councillor Nicholas Wood.
For the motion.
Thank you. I make that, Mayor, 21 for the motion, 27 against and 1 abstaining. So the motion is not carried.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Moving on to agenda item 7, notice of motion submitted by Councillors Mark Hooper and Dr. Ian Johnson, Barry Waterfront Development. Councillor Hooper, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the motion on behalf of Councillor Dr. Ian Johnson and myself. One of the first things I did when elected in May 2022 was to meet up with the Council's enforcement team to discuss the ongoing and incomplete works on the waterfront estate. I knew what was wrong and what was missing because I lived there and still do with my family. Excuse me. My councillor colleague Nick Hodges and I walked the estate from top to bottom, looking at the specific areas that the consortium had failed to complete in accordance with their planning consent. We highlighted the number of urban trees that were missing, estimated to be in the hundreds, the children's play areas that were fenced off, the dockside area being used as a builder's yards long after the builders had left, the revetments in front of Neptune Way without their promenade walkway, and the water feature and associated landscaping that should have been completed 3 years previously when the last flat overlooking Waterside Gardens was sold. A month or so later, I walked the roads and the pavements of the estate with council highway officers to discuss the reasons behind the roads and pavements being unfinished and unadopted. I was told there were safety concerns that were initially disputed by the consortium, but later accepted at all 4 of the junctions that run off Father Millennium, from Brewers Fair to Cozy Corner. I was sent a copy of the report, which outlines the works required to make them safe. In September of 2022, I met with the director and members of the planning team, at which point enforcement action against the developers was raised by the officers and as an option they were seeking to pursue. I was asked not to divulge this potential course of action to others, as officers recognised that due process needed to be followed. This seemed to be progress. At the September 2022 council meeting, I asked the executive leader, on behalf of residents on the waterfront, that legal actions should be pursued. In my supplementary, I pressed the leader to stop the developers selling at East Quay. Her response was telling. The leader did not want to pursue a stop notice, as she was concerned it would stop people being able to purchase their own home. So whilst agreeing with me on the need to force the developers to deliver against their legal undertakings, she was unwilling to force them to do so by the only method we all know to be successful, legal action to stop selling until such time as works are completed. What was rightly good enough for the district centre and the school wasn't good enough for the residents. A year later, in September this year, I asked the leader for an update, as nothing had changed in the preceding year. The linear park remained unfinished, the cliff tops weeds had regrown, the roads were still unadopted and still with their safety concerns. The leader referenced the public consultation at the pump house, which took place a week before and was well attended. What new news officers and cabinet members expected to glean from this meeting is beyond me. The issue wasn't what was wrong. That's all well known. It should have been how we put things right. We were told at that meeting that enforcement action was proceeding, and yet, only a few days ago, we find that the council were trying a third way with the developers. A voluntary agreement is how it was described by the council. But this grubby deal collapsed, and we are still left without a stop motion that will force the developers' hands. This lot have seen the council come in and run rings around them. Last week, I walked the estate again. I do it often, but this time with the reports from the Barron District News, who wanted to see the reality of the unfinished work for himself, aware that the self-congratulatory backslapping may not be the whole story. We saw the unfinished public open spaces, the water features still behind fencing, the street lights that weren't working. 18 months since I first took on the challenges on behalf of residents, and over a year since the council was supposedly considering legal action. The council has failed in its duty of care towards residents. We have had almost 2 years, that I'm aware of political indecision, half-baked measures and faux consultations. We've failed to hold these developers to account. The suggested RDLP preferred strategy debate at the last council meeting has proposed sites that are large in scale, perhaps not to the size of the waterfront, but nevertheless large. We need to learn from these failures to ensure those who will end up living by the little roundabout or on the road to Llandoch Hospital don't end up suffering the same issues as waterfront residents have endured. Finally, and assuming we can get some traction going forward, we need to think through ways that we can ensure that communities are recompensed. One item that should be pursued is the idea of a community orchard on the unusable section of the overflow car park, utilising a fraction of the trees lost from the estate. The developers won't do it unless they're pushed. I urge the council to support my motion. I look forward to hearing contributions from across the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Hodges, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I second the motion, and can I say that I totally agree with everything my ward colleague, Councillor Hooper, has had to say. There are areas in the waterfront in our ward that have had 3 sets of local elections and still do not have completed roads to a satisfactory standard. After years of personal attendance by myself on the planning committee and seeing the waterfront from when it was first thought of to the present day, I can only say that it's been a speculator's dream. The Vale of Glamorgan are plainly no good at bringing forward large schemes. We are pushed around, we are ignored, and we have plainly no traction with getting what we plainly need for our residents who not only live in our county area, but pay council tax towards us. Large schemes, and I say this continuously, and I will continue to say it, must be considered and reconsidered and monitored continually by our planning committee. We must go down at regular intervals when we pass a scheme and see, is it going to plan? Is it progressing as we wanted? Is it what the residents who have bought into these houses and areas expect, wanted or believed was being sold to them? If we do not do that, it is a failure of us as planners and also as a council. It is only right and proper that we use every means possible to make sure that this scheme is fully finished. And I'll just end on one small point. Some of the older houses, not in my ward, but of the other part, the further part opposite Morrison's, outside my ward, but part of the current waterfront, I am continuously amazed just how much scaffolding is constantly upon and around these buildings within not that many years of construction. Buildings that either have flat roofs or have these stuck-on windows that seem to do nothing but constantly crack and don't repair. We must be more obvious in what we say as a council that we want and how we expect our buildings to be built and to the standards that it should be adhered to. I fully agree with this motion. Not to do so, I think, lets down our residents, and we must be clear and precise in what we say to developers, not only on the waterfront, but anywhere else in the Vale in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Burnett, please, leader.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'll start because from the last motion, I was accused of not saying things when I did give details of the background to the actual transport infrastructure. So I'm going to go through each bullet in point to make sure that I cover every point that's been raised. Well, point one, and there's no issue there, no need for any debate. It's a statement of fact. So there we go. Bullet point two, that the consortium contracted a third party, etc. Well, you know, there's quite a few issues here, aren't there? Firstly, we know there are matters outstanding and uncompleted. I mean, again, that's stating the obvious and only looking at the types of issues we've already raised with them and continue to raise with them, both informally during ongoing meetings and more formally through lawyers. It is a bit disingenuous and political opportunism to raise this as a motion to council when matters are being progressed and when the ruling administration is leading from the front on this. It's ironic that it's come to council now after the public meeting has actually moved things forward so well. The council believes that the consortium are in breach of conditions, of their planning conditions. Well, yeah, it's, you know, no issue with this. And although, you know, everyone's going to have their own views on what's the residents have been let down and continue to be let down by the consortium. You know, I'm not going to come here tonight and make excuses for the developers. There can be no excuses. And likewise, I'm not going to suggest anything other than the fact that the consortium has failed in its duty of care. That said, we are taking it very seriously, and that's why we're now seeking recourse through the courts. And I think that it's worth saying that this council has actually had over 50 enforcement notices against the consortium. But I need to clarify that the district shopping centre was actually subject to a formal breach of condition enforcement notice, and the school was a threat of injunction. They both weren't legal because it's a question of negotiation, and we will go through the most expedient and most cost-effective route on that. As members know, that I and the chief executive meet the consortium on a fortnightly basis, except for this week when we didn't feel they were playing ball, so we actually cancelled it and we've moved forward with formal legal action. The council recognises that it has failed in its duty to care towards residents. Well, that's completely inaccurate, but I suppose it's to be expected. Firstly, the duty of care rests with the developers who face, you know, let's face it, they're selling products to the public and as such are likely to be in breach of their contracts with the individuals who they sell houses to. The council has no pecuniary interest in the land that the houses are on or the sales, so this needs to be very clear. That said, we are dealing with it as robustly as it's already set out. It's important to note this development has been underway for nearly 12 years, and during that time it's been monitored and ongoing breaches pursued. However, it must also be remembered that while this development is clearly important to the council, it is only one amongst other developments and enforcement complaints that are also received by the council each year. The council's duty bound to work with the consortium to ensure that the development is completed in accordance with both the relevant conditions of consent and the legal agreement that was signed alongside this. And if legal action is necessary to ensure this, then that must be taken as and when required. However, when taking action, we must rely on the advice from our own lawyers and also from council. And any action must be founded in law, and it should have a reasonable chance of success. To ignore such advice would be both foolish and could lead the council to open to challenge and significant costs. And I think that that's where you've seen the whole negotiation thing. So both Councillor Hooper and Councillor Collins and Councillor Johnson, who was also involved in the motion, all know what's been going on. And then it talks about it talks about the council says it will use all available means. That's exactly what we're doing. And should we use council land to fulfil the developers' obligations? No. If the developers are responsible for tree planting, the developers should plant trees, and we will continue to do that. And then if you want to look at using things like local nature partnership, etc., to look at the overflow car park fine, but I'm not giving up council land to meet the obligations of the consortium. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Marnie, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just bringing something up a moment. If you'll just give me a second or two, the actual motions there on the other screen. My question initially was going to be, is this, I was a little uncomfortable with points 3 and 4 on this, that we'd be voting that the council believes the consortium developers have breached the conditions of their planning approvals and recognise it's failed in its duty of care towards residents. My point is, I could well believe, I don't know the ins and outs of this situation. I've spent just years battling developers in my ward and their lack of consideration, their lack of adhering to planning consents and all the rest of it. And I've been shocked, stunned and appalled that in many of these times when I brought this up with the planning department to say, don't get up there, just shut them down if they're not going to do it, being faced with time after time, oh, actually, we don't have any legal powers to do this. So I thought, well, what's the point of all these things you're putting in there? It's just a facade, really. My question was going to be is, not that I dispute anything that Nick Hodges or Mark Hoop have come up with. I'm sure they're all perfectly true. But me not having seen the planning approval, or certainly not studied them, I'm too busy with the as I say, dealing with stuff in my own ward and forthcoming ill-advised developments on the horizon, that I would want to see the actual things that they claim aren't being adhered with in writing. I know they've outlined a few and I don't dispute that they're correct in that, but I feel a little uneasy voting for this when I haven't seen it in black and white. And a good point that was just raised does in fact, going back to my first point that I made, with legal opinion, does the council have the powers, even though we'd all be appalled that they haven't, to actually do this? And I would like to see that in writing. I've just heard Liz Burnett there, and I do apologise. I'm sure I'll be taken to task and put right. Did you really hear that she said that I don't know if her personally, but certainly the council met with the developers every fortnight? Every fortnight? Doesn't that mean they're taking the mick? I mean, what exactly are you doing at these fortnightly meetings? It's almost laughable. Yeah, by all means, get the legal involved. But surely they should have been involved and have a definitive answer to all of us right now, because this has been going on forever and ever. I mean, I'm fed up of developments. I say in my ward as well, these things that never appear. The promised community centre, the chemist, I think, was in Surrey, one of them. Now, a building plot. And I've always suggested that anything that has to be provided should be provided first before a brick is laid, quite frankly, or only to be always met with a gasp of horror. Oh, no, they've got to build so many houses first to get the money. No, they're massive national companies. Build the stuff you promised first, then you can build your houses. I look on in horror at the row of empty buildings described, I think, as restaurants and stuff. Well, that'd be funny. I was going to take them over as a restaurant, are they? It's a tiny little box. There's not even a patio outside the things. I mean, the thought that anybody to take those on with at least, most people perhaps may think, well, that's going to be a bit of a sell, isn't it? So a lot of these things, are just glossed over. But again, please, and I'm sure she will, Liz Burnett, did I really hear you say the council met with them every fortnight? And this is the result of those fortnightly meetings all this time later? They're taking the mick, surely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Carroll next, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I have long thought that the planning system in Wales is unfit for purpose, and the situation at the waterfront only reinforces that view. Planning obligations should not be optional, and developers should not operate in the belief that they do not have to adhere to them. I choose the word should deliberately, Madam Mayor, because an attitude clearly exists that breaching conditions will be tolerated. And that is why enforcement is so important, to send a clear message to developers that conditions must be complied with. I will therefore gladly support the motion this evening. The slapdash attitude too often taken by developers is completely unacceptable, and we must set a precedent that we will not stand for it. Sadly, this is not just isolated to the waterfront development, and I can list several other examples where developers have behaved in an unacceptable manner. I've seen it in my own ward of Landock, and I've seen it across the Vale of Glamorgan, and it is frankly contemptible. Developers must be made to realise that they have a responsibility to our communities. And as the body responsible for regulating planning conditions, this council has a key role to play. When developments are not built to the standard expected, the council must make clear that it is not acceptable, and it must use the powers at its disposal to make developers put things right. The motion before us this evening, Madam Mayor, makes clear that this council has failed in its duty of care to the residents of the waterfront. And I believe that it is important that this is recognised. Now, the leader in her comments suggested that the duty of care didn't lay with this authority, but lay with the developers. I say that is wrong, Madam Mayor. A duty exists on both of you. It exists on the developers to make sure that they build things to the standard that they expect and in accordance with promises they make when obtaining planning permission. But similarly, as the planning authority responsible for regulating the actions of developers, if things are not done as they should be, then the council must fulfil its obligations and responsibilities in ensuring that they put it right. I think it's important that this is recognised, and that's why I'll be supporting the motion this evening. Alongside action to put things right, there must be an acknowledgement on the part of the council when it has failed, and for these reasons I hope that the motion gains unanimous support this evening, although I anticipate from the comments of the leader that that will not be the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor William, please.
Diolch, Councillor Agant. Obviously, it may not be a surprise to you that as one of the local councillors who has, along with my fellow ward colleagues Nick Hodges and Mark Hooper, campaigned on this issue for so long, that I support this motion wholeheartedly. The thing is that safety alone is an issue that we as a council must act on with very great urgency. This isn't about political point scoring. We must act together as a council to support this motion and to take responsibility. For example, the lack of a right-hand filter coming out of Asda opposite the estate. That's an issue that we as a council have also failed to address for years, and has now been made more urgent and dangerous by the existence of the new St Barrick school. Other issues that have plagued the area and tried the patience of residents are the general failure of the developers to finish road surfacing, landscaping not just to the waterfront, but the surrounding area on the island off Clive Road. And then there's lighting issues too. All this general neglect by the developer, it's not been helped by the fact that nevertheless, this local authority have up until recently dragged its feet on this issue and failed to put pressure on the developers. We can't escape that fact. That has to be acknowledged. And it's our persistence as local members regarding this issue that has been essential in order to get things moving, chivying things along for the benefit of local people who've suffered for far too long. Councillor Carroll quite rightly referred to the need to send a signal to developers to show that we, all of us now as a council, will not tolerate their slapdash attitude. And this issue, as I said earlier, has now escalated further in importance due to the fact that you've got a 420-child school now operational and at full capacity there. The children's safety should be our greatest concerns, especially as we are, after all, their corporate parents. I do like the idea of the community orchard. It's very exciting, and that could be chivied along. I'd love to see that progress. Now, this motion, yes, it's critical of the council. It's uncomfortable for some people, but it's constructive too. And I urge all of you on all sides of this house, as my fellow councillors, to vote in the good faith in which this motion has been submitted, and please support it.
Thank you, Councillor William. Councillor Franks, please.
Thank you. There is a trend in the Vale of Glamorgan of the council not always looking after the interests of residents. And I would remind Cabinet about a smaller but no less important site, the 7-acre public recreation land at the former St Cyrus school site, which is vital to residents. This land by now should have been used by the public. Instead, it is fenced off and inaccessible to the public. Thanks to Dinespost Community Council and residents, the problem with buried building rubble has been highlighted. This is another example of the failure of the Vale of Glamorgan, the failure to look after the interests of residents of Dinespost is shocking. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Councillor John, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, this is a Vale-wide issue that down in Lantred Major, we've got a site that's basically still under the developer, despite the houses being completed. But nevertheless, it's not been adopted because it's not adoptable standard. We've even got land on a site going back to South Glamorgan days, which is still owned by the developer. This is basically a huge problem that we've got because it wasn't council land that it was built on. It was all private land and private ownership. And that is where the big breakdown in this. And of course, it does take a long time when you're involving council to get decisions. And quite honestly, you know, this is an issue that is right across. And I do sympathise with Councillor Hooper and tonight, because this is an issue that has got to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, there's been a few interesting points made by the leader of the opposition here, Councillor George Carroll. Attacking developers, by all means, if you want to attack them, but I think we all need to work with developers. And I'm sure we look at effective ways of working with them. And I think one of the main ways of working with them is looking at the plans, negotiating with them, discussing ways to go forward without using and utilising huge amounts of public money. Because every time we go to council and to go to court, we're effectively using public money.
That's the problem.
With not so much an expectation, nevertheless, of getting that money back. So we also got to be very careful. And therefore, we take advice from our legal people as to when we do this appropriately or not. We also got to bear in mind when the decision was made to develop those sites was some considerable period of time ago, and we got to look at the planning rules and regulations when we decide to do that. On a separate point, of course, as a cabinet member responsible for highways, I'm only responsible for highways which are adopted. And of course, a lot of these sites, I'm afraid, are not of adoptable standard, which I find rather frustrating because, you know, the council would like to adopt it because that means we've got control over them. So that's my separate point to this debate. And yes, you know, I share your frustrations. I mean, ideally, I would like everything to be of fantastic standard, and so it should be. But I also think that we also need to be bearing in mind what happened before and where we had the original planning consent, and we got to take that stance from then. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. There was actually a very interesting point from Councillor Wilson. I believe that Councillor Wilson is actually perhaps the longest-serving Labour member on this council. I don't know whether he was actually on the planning committee at the time that this was being debated, and whether he has any memory of that. Sorry, Councillor Wilson, do you want to answer that quickly? You're on mute.
First of all, I'm not the longest serving member. There are many other members on this council as longer serving than I am. As you know, through many differences, including Councillor Franks, I add to that.
I did say Labour, Councillor Wilson. Perhaps your hearing's not so good. But it's an very interesting point about sort of the ability.
Madam Mayor, can I make a point of order? I object to being called a Labour member. I would. I know we've got to have thick skins in this world, but that's beyond the pale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor
Franks, for the interjection, and Councillor Wilson, the comments. The point I was making for about Councillor Wilson's comments was that he seems to be in agreement that this is a great challenge, but he doesn't seem to have many powers to do it, which seems to be perhaps in in opposition to what his leader was suggesting earlier, that somehow there is something that they can do, because either these things can be rectified by us as the Vale Council, or these things that are outside of our control, or these are things that perhaps needs to be looked at within a wider Welsh context and the powers that Welsh Government has to intervene and to make these things happen. I say this as a member of this council in representing one of the other parts of the waterfront, and it's something that's been there, almost since day one for me as well, as dealing with the problems caused by, by the development that's taking place. I have people asking me why lights that they complained about 2 years ago have not been fixed, and I have to tell them it's not the Vale's responsibility. The consortium hasn't fixed it, and we haven't been able to adopt these yet. We talk about it's. I was just looking at. I find it struggle to believe that it's 5 years since we, as a planning committee, passed a temporary stop notice around South Haven and around the work by Persimmon. That was first done in November 18, then again in April 2019. I remember when we're helping Councillor Collins when she was elected with one of the first pieces of casework, which is around the repairs to a playground on the waterfront, where we were told by officers, we don't actually own that. That's the consortium's, and it appeared that the consortium or the council, whichever way around, had forgotten to transfer the playground to us so that we could improve it. So these are long-term, ongoing issues. Councillor Hooper's talked about it within the last 2 years, and Councillor Hodges within a far longer time frame. And the problem is that they are not being resolved. They are complex, but they are not being resolved by this council. And that's the problem that we face. So does this council have the powers to actually do anything about it or not? Fundamentally, if they don't have the powers, then we've failed our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Perry, please.
Hi, good evening again. This kind of reminds me of some units actually in Barry, which I visited, and it was signed off as completed, and the car park had been completed, but the car park hasn't been completed. And some of the units are now occupied, and a visitor to those units on the unmade, uneven so-called car park fell and sustained very, very horrific facial injuries. Yeah, we are talking about real people being injured seriously because things are being signed off when they're not completed. Things have been left in a state that's dangerous. We talked about planning conditions, and that did make me smile. The Vale Glamorgan Council seems to be unable to meet its own planning conditions when it's the builder. So perhaps we need to start enforcing on the Vale Glamorgan Council a little bit more sternly, a little bit more harshly, and actually enforce on them, or force on ourselves. And then we might look at enforcing on the large developers and small developers, although we are quite quick to enforce on little old ladies. I've got a situation in Bonvilston where in 2018 work began on 120 new dwellings. I believe it's 36 in that 5 years of being completed, more than 5 years, and 5 are partially built. The developer is now in administration. And when you walk around that estate, you do so at your own risk. It's one of those that's not going to be adopted, and we should really be talking about private management companies, and we should be using conditioning in planning to get rid of these management companies that rip us off. Is it called fleasehold? Why do we agree to fleasehold? Let's be strong, let's be powerful. No more fleasehold for our future residents. So there you are in Bonvilston. If you go out at night, even the day, you can trip trying to step down from the footway to the road. The road's not made, the footway's not made. The curbs stick up, the grates stick up. It's a mess, and there's no end in sight after over 5 years of construction. We had a robust LDP, so we do need better conditioning. Yeah, when we give approval for planning, we really need to nail this down so the developers can't get out of it. Someone mentioned planting trees. Well, trees get planted, but they're dead within 2 years. So what's the point? Tick, plant a tree. 18 months later, it's dead. But they planted the tree, they ticked the box, but that's what it's all about, isn't it? So it's not about planting trees, it's about having healthy living trees a few months later. We're very good at taking down mature trees that people like. We're not very good at planting trees that last 3 or 4 years. So I'll leave that there, but our robust LDP and our planning policies and our building control doesn't seem to be very, very good. So I share the frustrations of the residents in Barry. We've got them up here, they've got them in Lantwit, and we do need to look at how we condition things and how we ensure that our future residents and current residents actually are served properly by ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Campbell, please.
I just want to say thank you to Councillor Hooper and Councillor Johnson for bringing this motion to Council tonight. So in my ward, we've got the Glamorgan estate, which is a Taylor Wimpey estate. It was finished about a year ago. Over the summer, I actually took planning enforcement on Taylor Wimpey for a breach of planning because they let the landscaping and all the trees die and all the parks are in an atrocious state. So I'm currently going through that with residents here as well. So I'm behind you, councillors, and I'm standing here with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Cowp, please.
Thank you. Can I say, first of all, that I'm not in favour of the Vale of Glamorgan Council going head-to-head and taking legal action against developers, because that might be a misuse of public funds. However, we've had an example tonight, the Barry development, and also Councillor Franks brought up a development in Dinners Powys, where, you know, they're not in a fit state to be left. And the fact of the matter is, we shouldn't get to the point of enforcement. We should make sure that we've got the procedures in place and that we enforce them as developments are going along. And just to give you an example, Leckwith Quays has been approved by planning, and one of the conditions is that the bridge and the road will be built before any houses. And these are the things that we need to pay attention to, the prerequisites for developers, because undoubtedly we need houses and we need social housing, but we cannot build houses in any shape or form where there is no infrastructure, no safe roads, no street lighting, no play areas. That is not a good way to go. So I support this motion, and I just want councillors, all of us, to think what we need to do is go back and we need to enforce right from the start. It's no point waiting. We need to do it straight away, and we need to have a clear plan, a clear agreement with the developer. What's going to happen? When is it going to happen? When can we see it happening? And if we can't see it happening, we need to draw a line then, not now, years down the line. But people can't be left to live in these situations. It's not acceptable in any shape or form. Thank you.
Thank
Can
you,
I raise
Councillor.
a point of order, Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
I understand we're up to our 30 minutes, which is the new part of the process. So I wonder whether, instead of losing the opportunity to vote on this motion, I wonder whether we could move to a vote. I'm happy to forego my summing up, which would normally be in front of me as well. I wonder if we could just go to a vote and move on.
Councillor Hooper, I think we've got till 8:05. Yes, at 8:05. So, yeah, we will go into a vote soon. So I will just ask Councillor Sivanyanam, and if you would like to come back in,
thank you,
Councillor Hooper. Councillor Sivanyanam, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say I won't be voting for this motion, because a bit like the last motion, Mayor, this motion seems to be surrounded by lots of political rhetoric. This council exercises its authority as, you know, as the planning authority very seriously, and we take enforcement very seriously. And we are in negotiation or in talks with the consortium about how we can move forward, because as Councillor Cowp and Councillor Wilson have mentioned, and the only two councillors to mention this, you know, we are a public body and we do have to be careful how we spend public money. Given the budget that we will also be discussing very soon, there are going to be, you know, very many choices that we have to make, difficult choices. Having said that, this council, as the leader has already said, is meeting regularly with the developers so that we can move forward and find a solution. So for me, this motion adds nothing to that, to something that we are already doing, other than trying to make political gain out of it. And just as a final point, Mayor, that all councillors, as can the public, can look to our Participate waterfront page for the latest update on what's happening to the Barry waterfront development. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sivanyanam. Last comment from Councillor Hooper, please, and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for everyone's contribution this evening. I think it's been a worthwhile debate. This wasn't a politically motivated motion. It was a motion that I think if you speak to people who live on the waterfront, you'll find that they are completely upset. They feel let down by the council. They looked at the website that Ruba just mentioned, and they saw on it that alongside the legal proceedings, there was a separate undertaking being progressed by the council that subsequently failed. So I think they feel let down, and rightly feel let down. Just picking up some of the points. Firstly, Councillor Gwyn John's point about other major projects affected this, and Sam Campbell the same. I think this is a problem we have across the Vale, and a wider problem as well. So standing up against the developers is an important point. It's interesting, my colleagues, Councillor Johnson and Nick Hodges, referencing the fact that this has been an ongoing problem. This isn't new. This has been something that's been ongoing for a long time on the waterfront and big developments. I see the leader nodding to that as well, recognising it's a long-term issue, but it hasn't been solved. And pick up Councillor Wilson's point about needing to work with developers. They are running absolute rings around this council, and they're running rings around this leadership. And that's the failure that needs to be addressed in this thing. And the thing that I really get concerned about is Councillor Wilson seemed almost to the point of it didn't take the severity of not enforcing safety concerns outside a primary school that have been there ever since that primary school opened, and they still exist there today. And to that sort of cavalier attitude, we'll wait for them to sort it, frankly, isn't good enough. It does a disservice to this council, and more importantly, as Councillor William mentioned, it is actually a failure as a corporate parent. So that comment, I think, highlights why I would encourage people to support this motion, and those that don't, think about the point that Councillor Wilson made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. I think you requested a recorded vote as well. Did you request?
I did, please. Yeah.
Could I have six? Thank you. Could I have 6 members, please? Thank you. We'll go to a recorded vote now. I'll just ask the Chief Executive for the roll call, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So as before, I'll run through the names. If you can indicate whether you're for the motion as presented, against it, or if you wish to abstain. So we'll start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please.
For.
Councillor Julie Aviat.
Against.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Against the motion.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Against.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Against.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
For the motion.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Against.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
For the motion.
Councillor George Carroll.
For.
Councillor Christine Cave.
For.
Councillor Charles Champion.
For the motion.
Councillor Janice Charles.
For the motion.
Councillor Millie Collins.
For the motion.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
For the motion.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Against the motion.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
For the motion.
Councillor Chris Franks.
For the motion.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Against the motion.
Councillor Russell Godfrey.
For the motion.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
For the motion.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Against.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Against.
Councillor William Hennessy.
For the motion.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
For.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Against.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Against.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
Against.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Kevin Marnie.
Regrettably, I'm going to have to abstain in the absence of legal, what's name, not the principal. It should have been provided. You should have provided evidence for us so we could have all seen. That's the point. Thank you.
Councillor Naomi Marshalsea.
And I'd have been against.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
For.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Against.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Against the motion.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Against.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Against.
Councillor Ian Perry.
We need improvement. For.
Councillor Joanna Prithrow.
Against.
Councillor Ruba Sivanianam.
Against.
Councillor Caris Stallard.
And I'd been against.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Stefan William.
Obliged.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Against.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Against.
And Councillor Nicholas Wood.
For the motion.
Thank you. That is 1 abstention, 27 against the motion and 21 in favour of the motion. So the motion has failed, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Moving on to agenda item 8 is the reference review of the Joint Consultative Forum Constitution, Joint Consultative Forum 25th of September 2023. Can I ask the leader to take this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this is a reference from Joint Consultative Forum on the 25th, Monday, 25th September. And the purpose of the original report was for the Forum to review the proposed changes to JCF's constitution and seek its agreement and subsequent endorsement by full council. The origins of this stem from discussions held with council officers and the chair, including the forum membership and trade unions, stroke employee representatives, about ensuring that the forum could take advantage of as wide an array of representation as possible. From trade union and employee representatives, and to ensure that the forum maintained the level of representation needed to be quorate. The proposed changes to the JCF constitution, that's at paragraph 5.2, as well as within the council's constitution itself under paragraph 14.16, will ensure that should a local trade union or employee representative recognised by the council be unable to attend a meeting of the forum due to their availability, or in cases pending outcome of election of a local representative, for example, then provision can be made for a regional trade union representative or representatives to attend instead. The JCF subsequently agreed to these proposed changes to its constitution, and that these be forwarded to full council for approval. To allow both the JCF and the council's constitutions to be formally amended. So I would therefore move that council endorse these proposals.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you. I see no dissent here. So the reference is approved. Thank you. Agenda item 9. Sorry, yes, I'm on 9. Reference audited statement of accounts 2022-23, special governance and and Audit Committee from the 16th of November 2023. Leader again, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And this, as you said, was a reference from the Special Governance and Audit Committee on the 16th of November. The draft final statement of accounts included the consolidation of the draft City Deal Joint Committee accounts and the amended Big Fresh Audit Committee accounts. Audit work is also nearing completion in the Shared Regulatory Service and the Vale, Valleys and Cardiff Regional Adoption Service. The Section 151 officer also drew attention to a potential emerging priority in relation to RAC, reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, advising that whilst there was positive news on this matter at the moment, with there being no issues, this could always change in the future as surveys continue. The head of audit took the opportunity to advise committee that he'd provided reasonable assurance to the council in respect of activities for 22-23, and the external auditor, Mr. Veal, informed committee that no significant issues had arisen during the audit. There was one recommendation relating to senior officers' declarations of interest, and that had been complied with, and that the matter was going to be referred to us today, and for the Auditor General to sign off the accounts on the 7th of December. It's noted that Councillor Hooper, referring to the accounts for the joint committee from Cardiff Capital Region, advised that the council previously requested a representative of the joint committee attend a meeting of Governance and Audit Committee. And so that is being explored further. Mr. Evans, a lay member, asked whether there are any obligations to be highlighted, and the Section 151 officer confirmed that any obligations would have been picked up during audit and prior to full council meeting, advising that there were no obligations to be included at this point. The external auditor confirmed for members information that the Vale Glamorgan Council had completed its accounts by the end of June, but that not all local authorities in Wales had, and that he concurred that there was a good relationship with officers in the Vale who'd supported Audit Wales. So in their resolutions, they recommended that council that the final statement of accounts and annual governance statement appendices A, revised appendix, and B, to the report respectively, be approved. So I would, for this report, because we're going to discuss it next on the agenda, I would move that we note this reference and carry the comments over to the next agenda item. And I would move.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you both. That's approved. Agenda item, Councillor Hooper, do you have a point of order?
I had a point to that last one before you, and just reiterate, if I may.
Yes.
Thanks. I just want to thank the leader for pulling out the point about the Cardiff City region accounts and getting somebody in to be able to talk about it, because they were described as being complex. And I think that one of the things we need to do is to make sure that where possible, we aid residents to understand that complexity, hence the reason that we should have somebody from the Cardiff City region given that explanation to the Governance and Audit Committee. So I just wanted to make that point. Doesn't affect the passing of the motion, but I felt it needed to be said then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Agenda item 10 is the audited statement of accounts 2022 to 23. All members have also been sent today the supplementary information to the report titled Sensitivity Analysis and Projected Service Costs 2022 to 2023. Leader, is there any more to say on this?
Yes, Mayor. Unfortunately, because there's actually a lot more detail in this report, but in effect, the audited statement of accounts for 2022-23 comprise a whole load of different areas, so a bit of a whistle-stop tour, because as we know, they have gone to to governance and audit. And so the audit commenced on the 3rd of July, and that's complete for main Vale accounts. The amendments to the accounts have been agreed and reviewed by Governance and Audit Committee. And as you mentioned, there's supplementary paper reflects changes to correct sensitivity analysis on pension note. Audit Wales are issuing an unqualified audit report on the 2022-23 financial statements. Joint committee audits are now underway and making good progress, and the Big Fresh Catering Company audit is drawing to a close, and amended accounts have been received. The accounts are scheduled for sign-off, as mentioned by the Auditor General on the 7th of December. This report requests sign-off of annual governance statement, amended statement of accounts, and letter of representation. In terms of Appendix A, there are a small number of amendments to the accounts set out in ISA 260 statement, City Deal, the inclusion of draft City Deal accounts for last year. The draft City Deal accounts were received on the 15th of September 2023. In terms of Big Fresh, amendments to transactions in respect of Big Fresh and the consolidation of the Big Fresh Catering Company accounts. Within the single entity accounts, the accounts have been amended to include a dividend relating to 2022-23 of 304,000. This has been transferred to school balances. I think that's one of the positives of the model. And this amendment also affects the debtors balance by the same amount. The single entity debtors balance also includes an amendment of 260,000 to reflect the overclaim of a Welsh Government grant for free school meals. However, this is a corresponding adjustment against creditors because this sum is then owed to Welsh Government. There's an amendment to the presentation of the debtors and creditors notes, changes to the presentation of capital, adjustments in the accounts, a change to the split between short and long term for social care debtors. In terms of the declaration of interest for senior management, Audit Wales have a recommendation in respect of senior management declarations of interest, which has been actioned during the audit period to provide additional assurance in this area, and this return will be utilised as part of the 2023-24 closure of accounts process. In relation to the annual governance statement, it assesses corporate governance arrangements across the whole organisation. The report concludes that there is a sound overall control environment, and the head of Regional Internal Audit Services overall opinion was of reasonable assurance. There's no changes from the draft ISA 260 presented in July 2023, other than the inclusion of the updated whistleblowing policy, which has been reflected in this final version. So in terms of recommendations, if I can just scroll down to those, there are 5 recommendations before Council today. And that is that the Council is recommended to approve the final statement of accounts and annual governance statement at Appendix A and B respectively. That 2, Council is recommended to delegate authority to the Section 151 officer in liaison with the Chair of Governance and Audit Committee to make any final adjustments to the final statement of accounts and annual governance statement as necessary. 3, that Council is recommended to note the response to the Audit Wales audit inquiries at Appendix C. 4, Council is recommended to note the Audit Wales ISA 260 and management actions agreed by the Vale Council at Appendix D. And finally, 5, Council is recommended to approve the letter of representation attached to Appendix E. And I would move.
And I'll second that too as a member of the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Prothero. There are no comments. The audited statement of accounts is agreed. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean obviously, do have comments on the audited statement of accounts. It's a very large and very complex document, which has had a great deal of work that's gone into it, and so I'd like to thank our staff and also those at Audit Wales for what they've contributed. My questions are not with regards to to interpretation of the facts here, simply that there are facts, and I think it's normal at this point in the year for me to draw a couple of comparisons with other reports that we get during the year. So one of the challenges that I find as a member, not of the currently of the Governance and Audit Committee, but as a member of the Council, is the material that's placed in front of us when we have our budget setting meeting, which is at the start of March, and the papers for which went in February. And one of the challenges there is that we are making judgments based around what we're being told, and they're not always they're the best. They may well be the best estimates that our officers can provide at the time, but they're not necessarily the most accurate figures that we have at the end of the day. So if I'm reading correctly, Appendix D from the Cabinet Papers on the 27th of February said that anticipated that at the end of March, so a month later, we would have around £94.5 million across our general fund, earmarked reserves, and the HRA fund, the Housing Revenue accounts. But the figures that we're provided with in the accounts here suggest it's around about £113 million, which is, what's that? Is that £18 million more than the amounts that we anticipated? And I think the context for that is that at the end of the 2018-19 year, so the year before COVID, that was around 83 million. So our actual reserves now at the end of this financial year, despite a planned drawdown on reserves, which we've supported because that's spend that hasn't been able to take place during the COVID years, despite a drawdown of spend of around £50 million, we still have around £30 million more in our reserves than we did before we went into the start of COVID. So I think it's an interesting consideration for our funds to look at that. There are a couple of other points within the report that I think are of interest. They are referred to in some of the introductions. So the change in our pensions in the unusable reserve is vastly different. That I think drops from being a £276 million deficit to around, I think, £64 million deficit. So there's a big change in our unusable reserves. And also, I do think it's, I'm not going to ask for detail here because I don't think it's appropriate within this forum, but I would probably like to go to officers at a later point just to clarify some details regarding some of the exit packages which are mentioned within the report here. There's also reference in quite a detail to the housing revenue accounts. I'm aware that's going to Homes and Safe Communities on Wednesday, so hopefully some of the queries that I've got about that can be unpacked during that meeting, although I appreciate that meeting is looking at this year and next year rather than looking back at last year's figures. But obviously when you have a change of, I think it's a correction of around £6.5 million, then I think sort of it'd be useful to get a bit more of an understanding of quite where that's come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Franks, please.
Thank you. There's a substantial list of projects under the City Deal heading. I note £34 million for Aberthaw. Can we have an update itemising the benefits so far and also the anticipated benefits? Further, will I presume the leader detail the specific benefits of the other schemes, especially the £50 million strategic premises fund? I'd like to go to page 55. Education improvement and pressures, and against this heading there's a reference to fund the current pressures within learning and skills, and the figures are £2.9 million transferred in, £0.244 thousand transferred out, and then in the accounts for that heading, there's 3.55. Could you detail what that money is being used for, and is it being used to assist the 21 schools that are currently in deficit funding, or will it be used for such deficit funding? And you'll be pleased to hear the last item is Project Zero. There's £1.4 million in the reserves. What is this money being held for, and when will it be applied, and to what projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Councillor Carroll next, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. On behalf of the Conservative Group, I echo the comments that have already been raised, thanking the internal audit team here at the Council and also the team at Audit Wales for their work in preparing the accounts. It is a time-consuming and laborious process, and I'm sure we would all say we don't envy those who have gone through that task. Obviously, the statement of accounts is separate from the budget setting process, and as you will expect, I will be raising concerns about that closer to the time, as I usually do. I think that it was regrettable that the budget for the financial year in question was passed. I voted against it. That said, it was passed, and the matter before us this evening is ensuring that all money was spent with propriety and ensuring that all the sums add up, so to speak. So I thank everyone for that, and although I share Councillor Johnson's concerns about the level of reserves, I will raise that point in the budget setting process in March. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, would you like to come back in with any replies? Leader, you're on mute.
Yes, Mayor. I think that this is quite interesting. I mean, there was a full and frank discussion at Governance and Audit, where we have very qualified people who actually interrogate the information at length, and they sent this report to us for our endorsement. And I think many of the topics that have been raised are actually things, again, that you should be putting a matter for consideration in, so they can be discussed fully in scrutiny. I would also say that I know that the Section 151 officer has recently held 2 in-depth briefings on the financial situation and the medium-term financial plan refresh, which my understanding is not all councillors attended. And again, when you have the Section 151 officer and the operational manager and the chief exec all present, prepared to answer any questions whatsoever, and it really is a shame that opportunity hasn't been taken up, although I do believe that it's been recorded so people won't have the opportunity to ask questions, but they will have an opportunity to view those sessions. So I mean, as I said, this is historic. It's statement of accounts. It has the backing of Governance and Audit Committee, and the Audit Wales has expressed a willingness to give its approval. So I would just say that I'm happy to confirm that I move the report or the recommendations.
Madam Mayor, on a point of order, could I seek clarification? I've asked a number of questions that have studiously been ignored, with the implication that they are inappropriate. Can I have guidance from the monitoring officer or yourself that the questions I've asked are perfectly valid and appropriate for a council meeting? Thank you.
I'll ask the monitoring officer, please. Could I ask the monitoring officer, please, for advice?
Yes, you may.
Thank
I'm
you.
just trying to get my camera on and my microphone. If you could clarify the specific questions that you were referring to, Councillor Franks.
I would be delighted. I could read the whole thing out again if you like, but I might be testing people's patience. Basically, I raised the question of the substantial list of projects under the city deal heading, specifically the £34 million for Aberthaw, and I specifically asked, can we have an update itemising the benefits so far and also anticipated benefits? Further, will you detail the specific benefits of the other schemes, especially the £50 million strategic fund? Then I moved on to page 55, education improvement, and I highlighted the fact that there's £3.55 million in this fund, and I specifically asked, is this money being used to assist in the deficit for the 21 schools currently or projected? And my final question was, Project Zero is £1.4 million in the accounts. What is this money? What is this sum being held for in reserve? How will it be applied to what projects? Thank you.
And with regards to those points, those are matters which officers can respond to following the meeting.
Yeah, but with respect, I'm asking the question now. These papers are before us. We're being asked to vote on these things. I know the officers can perhaps help, but after the meeting, the leader is responsible for these accounts. The leader should be able to answer, and it's simply not good enough to say, "Oh well, you should have gone to a meeting." I did go to that meeting. I'm quite good at going to these meetings. I'm asking the meeting now in public. Thank you.
Mayor, I've given my response. Thank you.
Yes, the monitoring officer has given the response. Sorry, Councillor Johnson, can I bring the leader in, please, to reply? If you would like to reply, or would like wait until?
I'm happy to reply, because projects under city deal, it would be reasonable to ask for a presentation from the city region with the depth of detail that you should wish. I mean, obviously that has been scrutinised by officers, etc. The education improvement, that would be a matter for the budget setting process for this year in terms of that. And in terms of Project Zero, the Project Zero reserve is to deliver the Project Zero plan. And so that is fully available. We can send you all those details.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. Sorry for keeping you waiting, Councillor Johnson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wish to protest against the tone being used by the leader with regards to the attendance at meetings or the possible ways in which we can raise matters. There were indeed two meetings which were two briefing meetings which were organised. One of those was directly at the same time as a crucial planning meeting, which meant that many members could not attend. The other was placed at 6 o'clock in the evening, 2 hours after the beginning of a Democratic Services Committee meeting, in which in reality, as chair, I had to end prematurely so that members could leave one meeting to attend another. And I was unable to attend the briefing at 6 o'clock because I had a further meeting at Barry Town Council at 7. So it's all very well to say that there are meetings and briefings put on and we should attend them. But in reality, we cannot attend all meetings. And a hectoring tone which suggests that everybody should, and this is not full council, is the correct place for these questions. We can get detail from officers at any time, but we expect answers from the leader on these matters. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Anyone else has nothing else to say? Are we accepting the statement of accounts? Yes. Thank you. Agenda item 11, use of the Chief Executive's emergency powers. Do I have acceptance? Anybody want to say? Councillor Marnie, did you want to say something?
Let me just bring this up a moment, if I may. 2 secs. Thank you. Yeah, it was just a query actually before just acceptance on this. My eyes were drawn to, I hesitate to say yet again, the Barry Docks Transport Interchange. I'm reading here, due to delays of the contractor being able to take temporary ownership of the site, it appears there were certain penalties and overcosts built into this, which under emergency powers the chief executive approved. I know he's here today, and perhaps I was wondering if he could clarify why they weren't able to take ownership and why it inflicted penalties, if indeed there were penalties, extra costs, and what was his thinking in approving those associated with that. My second query, again to the CEO on the same subject, is that it actually says that with these extra costs and all the rest of it, the total construction costs were almost £1.7 million. Well, obviously, we know it was £2.7 million, and I know there'll be a simple explanation, but what was the other £1 million spent on then? And my very last question would be to the Cabinet member on this for a clarification. It says here, the increased costs were funded through Cardiff Capital Region Grant and S106 monies. Now, the clarification I would ask for, and it may well be my fault, is that as alluded to earlier, in every single discussion in full council, I seem to recall it being mentioned that all the money came from Cardiff Capital Region costs, whereas this indicates that there was actually community-funded local S106 monies involved. Now, I do accept that I may well have either misunderstood previous statements or misheard, and perhaps that could be clarified that the Cabinet member actually did mention that there was actual local money as well as the Cardiff Capital Region money going into this as well. So I wonder if those questions could be very quickly answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manny. I'll take Councillor Stephen Haynes' comments first. Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. I was quite shocked what was written about Eglers Brewis Road, active travel improvements in this. You know, there's money was allocated or being spent for protection, special roadworks for protection of trees. Well, it's a shame that the council cut down a fair chunk of the trees for a good line of sight and then undermined the roots of a fair chunk of the others. I'd love to know which trees this special boardwalk is being used for, because I hope it's not being used for the ones that are already been cut down and are now firewood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Liz Burnett, would you like to reply to any of this?
Well, actually, Mayor, I'd actually like to propose the report if I could. That, you know, this is in effect the emergency powers that have been exercised by the Chief Exec since 25th of September. It is a housekeeping report. Any emergency powers have to be signed off by the Cabinet member, Section 106 officer, leader, and Cabinet and it's just basically outlining to Council the 4 uses of emergency powers since that time, and these were all things that had already had approval and that there was a reason for moving them forward. So emergency powers were used. So I mean, really, this is just something for Council to note, and therefore I would move that we note.
And I'll second those for noting, Mayor.
Thank you both.
That's not acceptable. We've asked questions, perfectly reasonable questions.
Leader, would you like to reply again? Oh, can I have the monitoring officer, please, as well?
If the monitoring officer could come in, thank you.
Yes, if I could just clarify. So they are for noting, so the action has been taken, but I'm sure, as I mentioned on the last occasion, that the points will be taken on board and a response can follow from officers following the meeting. But they are for noting, in line with the Constitution, the decision has been taken and action has been taken accordingly.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, yes.
much has been made about things going to scrutiny, and this hasn't gone to scrutiny. The first time we get a chance to talk, anyone gets to talk about these things, it's just for noting. It's not good enough. Honestly, Chair, I mean, it's not good enough. It comes to this body, we should have a right to ask questions, and they should be answered. And if there's no point in us coming here if you're not going to answer the questions.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Could I ask the monitoring officer to advise again, please?
Yes, thank you. So in line with the Constitution, section 26 of the Constitution sets out the provisions regarding the use of emergency powers on the part of the Chief Executive as outlined by the leader, and it does form part of the Constitution that once that power has been utilised, that a report will come for noting for information to members. So as I've mentioned earlier, the action has been taken in line with the Constitution, and but I'm sure officers will clarify the points following the meeting, but it is just for noting at this stage.
Thank you, monitoring officer. Chief Executive, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just for clarification, in addition to what the monitoring officers just said, Councillor Marnie raised an issue. Well, he raised a question around 21A, which was the Barry Docks interchange, about the costs exceeding what was planned. And Councillor Haynes raised a question on item D, which was Eglwys Brewis Road, and sought an explanation again as to why a certain action was taken and why it was taken at that time. I'm more than happy to respond to Councillor Marnie and Councillor Haynes, setting out exactly why there was a need to take emergency powers in those cases, which I'm entitled to do under the Constitution if those decisions are needed to be taken in an emergency, and set out the details of why they were taken and what they involved, if that helps both Councillor Marnie and Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. On a point of order, I'd just seek some guidance from the monitoring officer when items come to either full council or indeed to scrutiny committees for noting, because I was always under the impression that even if there weren't specific recommendations set out within the report, members were afforded the opportunity to ask questions about the contents of that report, and typically those questions are answered. So I just wanted clarification as to whether, were the leader or indeed any other cabinet members so minded, would it be proper and possible for them to answer those questions in the meeting this evening?
Can I bring the Chief Executive in again, please?
Yeah, I won't. Well, I will try to answer your question, Councillor Carroll, but I'll try and do it in the context of why this item is before you. This item is for noting. It's for decisions that have already been taken, so they're not for decisions that can be unpicked, if you want, for want of a better word. And to be totally clear, they were decisions taken by myself, nobody else. They were decisions taken by me as Chief Executive under emergency powers. So the best person to answer those questions would be me, because I took them. And that's where I'm at a slight disadvantage, because the way the Constitution is operated, and the monitoring officer can come in on this, you'd have to waive standing orders for me to answer those questions. But I've already indicated that I am quite happy to write to Councillor Marnie and Councillor Haynes on the two issues that they rose in terms of the decisions taken, and I'm more than happy to copy all council members into those answers as well, if that helps other council members. But the context of these decisions is that they were decisions taken by me. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I just welcome the Chief Officer's, Chief Executive's offer to write to all councillors with the answers rather than just Councillor Marnie and Councillor Haynes, because I think it's in wider interest. But perhaps the monitoring officer or somebody could set out how these decisions that are made by the Chief Executive using his emergency powers can be called in to scrutiny. They're all allocated a a relevant scrutiny committee. So I'm just wondering if we could be reminded of the process by which those decisions can be scrutinised. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor John, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to mention here, most of these cases are
We may never know how that sentence was going to end.
No. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, in response to Councillor Johnson, we can probably guess what he's going to say, but if you don't mind, Chair, just give me a moment to come back in. Oh, there you
go. Basically, if I may continue, emergency powers are used for urgent decision. And I've had to sign one off today it would have meant shutting the leisure centre if we hadn't got this boiler renewed. And we cannot wait months on end for members to see this in full council. Yes, a report could go to scrutiny for you to be aware of it, but these decisions have to be made, and they're made by the chief executive of the council. It's not a case of doing things under the table that are wrong. It's a case of keeping things moving.
We
and
were
that's
just
why
asking.
I kept this
You just
leisure
made up
centre
an
open
accusation
today,
of that.
and that's
We were
important.
Just asking why.
Sorry,
don't make up accusations. I mean, that's unbelievable. Unbelievable. We were just asking why. There's no accusations of any sort.
Councillor Manny, please. Well, if you put your hand up, I'll bring you back in.
Thank you.
Carry on, Councillor.
No, I've just completed what I was going to say. That's what these decisions are made by the chief executive for. And there's no respect taken on it.
Thank you, Councillor John.
Thank you.
Councillor Manny.
I've got to come back in, and quite popular. I've been told to come back in and vote with time. There's no accusation here. You're actually saying I've asked a couple of perfectly reasonable questions, not with any ulterior motive, for why these decisions were made. Not why did you rush to renew a new boiler in your particular case or whatever. We can understand that, but you can explain that. Nobody's criticising anybody. Genuine questions as to why. I'm quite astounded by your little rant, quite frankly, then. What that was about, I've no idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manny. So, this report is for noting the use of Chief Executive's emergency powers, and I think you've all had your answers in this meeting. Thank you very much. So, this is agreed. Agenda item 12. Amendments to the Council's Constitution, and the leader will take this report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. The Council's approval is sought to include in the Constitution at section 417.3 the Council's revised multi-location meetings policy Appendix A to the report that was considered by Democratic Services Committee in July of this year and approved by Cabinet on the 7th of September, and which is available on the Council's website. Council approval is also being sought to include the revised public participation guide at Appendix B to this report, which has been updated in line with the revised multi-location meetings policy at section 20 of the Constitution. The table at paragraph 2.2 of the report refers to the proposed amendments to section 14.10, responsibility for functions having regard to the relevant legislation. And paragraph 2.4 of the report seeks an amendment to the existing scheme of officer delegations at section 26 to include a delegation to the operational manager for democratic services in relation to setting of registrar's fees, having received previous approval from Cabinet. And finally, Council approval is also sought to increase the number of days that payments to co-opted members with voting rights who serve on Council's committees receive. The proposal is that this be amended in the Constitution from 10 days to 15 days at section 27. The increase is being proposed having regard to the increase in workload of committees as a result of the Local Government Elections Wales Act 2021, in particular in relation to the Governance and Audit Committee and the Standards Committee. So the recommendations that are in the report, we have 5 recommendations before us, and that's that Council approves the inclusion of the revised multi-location meetings policy, section 417.3 of the Council's Constitution as set out in Appendix A to this report, that the Council's Constitution be amended accordingly. 2, that the changes in legislation pertaining to functions of full council, that's section 1410, as set out in paragraph 2.2 of this report, be noted and the council's constitution be amended accordingly. 3, that the council approves the proposed amendments to section 20, and that's the guides to public speaking at committees of the council's constitution, as set out in appendix B to this report, and that the council's constitution be amended accordingly. 4, that the changes to the relevant officer delegation as set out in paragraph 2.4 of this report be approved, and that section 26 of the constitution be amended accordingly. And finally, at 5, that the proposed change to co-opted members' allowances in section 27.3 of the council's constitution as set out in paragraph 2.5 of this report be approved, and the council's constitution amended accordingly. And I would move.
And I'll second those recommendations, Mayor.
Thank you both. Councillor Haynes, please.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, Mayor, sorry. I've got a question, and hopefully it can be answered. I'll appreciate it might be a hard question for some people to answer. Under the new, I've had a look through the report on this, and I can't find any reference to ensure that we are quorate. Now, if I can't see someone on a screen, and if I can't see someone in the room, how do I know they're not in whether they're in the meeting or not? They could be doing the windows, take their dog for a walk. They could be down the pub. We don't know. All we know is that a computer is connected to the server. We don't know anyone's at the end of that computer, and we don't even know if it's a councillor at the end of that computer. It could be a councillor's sibling, for example. So I do wonder, under this new multi-location system, how we actually know we're quorate. Now, I've mentioned this a number of times to people. I've mentioned it to Democratic. I've mentioned it to councillors. Yet no one seems to be able to give me an answer on it. So I thought, now's the time. Perhaps someone can.
So, thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Carroll, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I thank the leader for the report. To raise 2 points, it's welcome that finally changes are being made to the council's constitution to account for multi-location meetings, but I would re-emphasise the point that I have stated on several previous occasions. It's lamentable that it's taken so long to get to this point. Other authorities managed to do it much more quickly than this authority did, and it's important that we just get on with it. And regarding the second point, and I will raise this as a point of order if necessary, I have received a message from Councillor Ernest, who unfortunately suffered a medical emergency, and so he was unable to attend the meeting or send apologies. If his apologies could be recorded in the minutes, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor John, please.
Madam Mayor, I have never thought I'd come to see the day on this council where we'd see the integrity of members being questioned by a councillor. What are we coming to?
Point of order, Chair. I was
Haynes.
not questioning people's integrity. I was questioning whether they were there. If someone goes to the toilet here, I can tell they've gone to the toilet. If a councillor goes to the toilet and they're at home, how do we know?
Rubbish.
To be honest, Chair, I take exception to that accusation, and I would hope Councillor Gwyn John would withdraw it.
Councillor Perry, please.
Yeah, I can second Stephen Haynes's concerns there. And I've had an incident with a community council in a situation where someone has actually said that we weren't quorate when we actually were, due to a similar thing where someone couldn't unmute themselves, but they were there until they couldn't unmute themselves, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, there are loads of names here, but who is actually here? And I agree, but I'm a big supporter of these remote meetings rather than face-to-face. It's the way forward. We've done it for many, many years in the private sector with multinational companies operating globally with language barriers, but still we do not know 100% that we are quorate.
Thanks, Councillor Perry. Councillor Cowp, please.
Thank you, Chair. From the point of view of inclusion of everybody, whatever their needs are, we have to have and continue to have these meetings. And I'm trusting that everybody who is in the meeting is actually in the meeting. As to leaving the meeting for an urgent call of nature, for a meeting that goes on 3 hours, some people have to do that. They need to do that. Whether they need to put a message on if they're not in the meeting is a different matter. But from the point of view of inclusion, we need to continue with these kind of meetings where anybody with any difficulty or disability or need can join the meetings in whatever shape or form they want to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowp. Can I ask the Monitoring Office in for some advice, please?
Yes, of course. I mean, certainly the recommendations before members tonight consider being proposed and seconded, but on that particular point, it's probably quite a convoluted answer that I'd give to Councillor Haynes, and probably outside of the particular the report, but I mean, certainly in summary, we are conducting meetings in line with the legislation. We do have facilities which list who's in attendance, and they are recorded certainly under the people facility, but rest assured from a legal monitoring officer perspective that we are satisfied as officers that the meeting is quorate, and if at any time that the meeting dips below the numbers required to be quorate, officers would announce that to the chair.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. So now are we happy to approve the amendments to the Council's Constitution? Yes? Thank you. It's approved. Agenda item 13, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2023 to 24. The leader, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So as stated, this is a reference from Cabinet, and the mid-year report is prepared in compliance with the SIPFA 2021 revised code of practice on treasury management, and it contains a number of key areas. There's the economic update, detailed report on the factors that were driving the UK economy during the period under review up to the 30th of September this year, an analysis of interest rate forecast for the period from December 2023 to September 2026. And I think, as the report mentions, that we are still suffering from the outcomes of the mini fiscal event that has actually destabilised the economy of this country. The Treasury Management Strategy 2023-24 in review. There's no policy changes as of 30th of September 2023. The Council's Capital Expenditure and Prudential Indicators Review at Appendix 1, the Treasury Management and Prudential Treasury indicators are based on the Quarter 2 Capital Programme, and that was reported previously. to Cabinet on the same day as this report was taken. Appendix 1 provides a detailed summary of the Council's current prudential indicators and the outlook for the next 3 years. It discussed the investment portfolio of 2023-24, and investments as of 30th of September of this year were 72.67 million, and that's down from 96.92 million as of the 1st of April 2023. Interest is an average rate of 4.28%, and amounting to just over a million, or nearly 1.1 million, included accrued interest that was received from April 2023 to September 2023. The borrowing strategy for 2023 to 24 is that all new and replacement borrowing has been financed with internal funds so far this year. External debt as of the 30th of September was 145.655 million, and that's actually down from 148.483 million as it was at the 1st of April. Loans repaid to the 30th of September totaled 2.658 million, and that was at a rate of 5.64%. External interest at an average rate of 4.4% and amounting to 3.139 million was paid on these loans during the first 6 months of 2023-24. There's estimated total interest to be charged to revenue for internal borrowing for pooled loans for 2023-24 is 1.257 million at a rate of 5.02%. And the estimated average rate of interest charged for pooled loans, as both external and internal borrowing for 2023-24, is 4.56. And finally, it covered debt rescheduling. Debt rescheduling opportunities have been very limited, and no debt rescheduling has therefore been undertaken to date in the current financial year. So the Treasury Management mid-year report has been referred to Council for consideration, and that the latest Treasury Management indicators are set out in Appendix 1 be referred to Council on the 4th of December, that's today, for consideration. I would therefore, let's go back. I would move that the Treasury Management mid-year report be approved.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you both. I see no hands, no dissent. So the report is accepted, approved. Agenda item 14, the use of the Council's urgency decision procedure. This report is for noting. Leader, please.
Yeah, sorry, this is the fun and games of working off the screen. I'm just trying to bring up the relevant report. Hang on. So yeah, agenda item 14, as indicated, is another housekeeping report into the use of the urgent decision procedure under Article 15.14 of the Constitution. They are laid out at sections A to E on the agenda, and that relates to the agreement to enter into a supplementary agreement for with the developer for the construction of new council apartments at Caddiston Barry, and that covers a Part 1 and a Part 2 report. C was the Vale Glamorgan Community Review draft proposals. D, agency worker contract awards, that was Part 1 report, and E, agency worker contract awards. And mainly they were in order to accept contracts or to bring items to this council. So I would therefore move we note.
And I'll second that we note, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you both. Councillor Marnie?
Yes, just a quickie for the benefit of some of the members of the council here. I note under this is urgent decision as opposed to emergency powers. But at the bottom of this report, it actually says reasons that these decisions were taken. That's how simple it is. No drama, is it? Quite simple. Answer the question, put the facts there. Well, haven't you answered the question? Put the facts there so the questions don't have to be asked. How simple is that? Which goes back to my original point of the just asking simple questions of the chief executive about his decision and what he's made. I mean, he's indicated, of course, he has no problem whatsoever in answering that. So just for the benefit of some on his council who appear to think that's unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else? Thank you. So the report has been approved. Moving on to agenda item 15, the questions by members. Question 1 from Councillor Helen Payne to the Deputy Leader, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Payne. So this was a question on the levelling up bid. The Barry Making Waves Levelling Up project provides a catalyst for regeneration across the town. It will regenerate one of the final significant post-industrial brownfield sites within the Barry Dock area, opening it up to the public and improving access to the water via the new marina and water sports centre. It will also include the creation of employment space for new quality jobs, while at the same time safeguarding the heritage of Barry. A linear park will then provide 2 acres of high quality, publicly accessible space at the heart of Barry's waterfront. These are key projects which will support the wider strategic growth of Barry. All of this funding will build on the work currently being undertaken to develop a placemaking plan for Barry. And then in addition, this funding must also be considered alongside the recent award of the Long-Term Towns Fund of 20 million over 10 years and the Shared Prosperity Fund, which runs until March 2025. The Long-Term Towns Fund will see the council work with businesses and communities to combat antisocial behaviour, support regeneration, heritage, the town centre, transport and connectivity. Other investments include a new Transport for Wales Barry Railway Depot, the delivery of a multi-million-pound Cardiff and Vale waterfront campus, and the Western Gateway project. The council has also been working with UHB, University Health Board, to ensure that this £20 million plus project delivers much needed housing and a new clinic. Collectively, these investments of over £100 million in Barry represent a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring about transformative change in the town and opportunities for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Question 2 is from Councillor William to the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and the Welsh Language. Councillor Birch, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor William, for your question. I'm aware that you've already been in touch with the Chief Executive and officers have responded to this question on the 20th of November. You will therefore be aware the Council is currently developing proposals to support the anticipated growing demand in Welsh medium secondary education in readiness for September 2027 and continue to be proactive in fulfilling its commitments aligned to our Welsh in Education strategic plan. I hope you will agree that the work done in recent years continues to have a positive impact on the Welsh medium education sector, and I would be happy to make available the response of officers to all members of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch.
Supplementary, please.
Yes, Councillor William.
And firstly, thank you very much for your response, Councillor Birch. I just need to sort of tie these things down. So my question is, quite simply, the Council has a timeline to open another Welsh medium secondary school. Can you assure me that there are plans for a second secondary school in the Vale?
Well, I think my answer is that the officers are working on developing it, aren't they? Yeah. I mean, it's obvious that the Western Vale is going to need a Welsh medium secondary school. So, yes, this is what they're working on at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Thank you, Councillor William. Question 3 is from Councillor Susan Lloyd-Selby to the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Leader, please. Leader, you're on mute.
I always do that when I'm speaking my most eloquently. Thank you both. The council's taking forward a range of work to support people. This includes key services ranging from housing and employment advice, benefits, and the essential work being undertaken in our schools. Our schools are at the forefront of much work to support the school community and the wider community. This includes food projects like Big Box Boyd, which has actually been spread right across Wales, and other food pantry and support models being developed in our schools. Work on period poverty together with advice, support and well-being focused activities. And I think some of that was resulted in Haddixton being one of the top 3 in the world. But as part of the budget for 2023-24, a cost of living reserve of £854,000 was established to fund work to alleviate the pressures of the cost of living crisis. The reserve has been used to provide additional funding to citizens' advice, and £30,000 has been agreed for 2023-24 and also for 2024-25. In addition to their annual grant of £157,335. And I think it's worth noting that we know there's a multiplier effect of every single pound that we give to agencies like CAB that provide support. And there's also funding of £3,500 to the Vale Food Bank to bring the funding up to £20,000 in 2023-24 and a further £20,000 in 2024-25 to provide additional support to those in receipt of free school meals to assist with and there's also additional support to those in receipt of free school meals to assist with the cost of food over the 2023 school summer holidays, and that was £220,000, and to contribute to the additional costs associated with the rollout of universal school meals in primary schools. That's £200,000 for 2023-24 and a further £100,000 in 2024-25. We're currently seeking bids for funding from small community grants pot, that's £25,000, to assist in providing services to assist the community. And this could, for example, include the provision of warm spaces over the winter, which were so successful last year. The council's cost of living web pages have recently been updated to provide more information on entitlements, energy and housing, as well as a range of other support. Our age-friendly Vale officer has also been working with colleagues and partners to ensure older residents are able to access services and support, including greater awareness of pension credits. We continue to work with our partners to provide funding and support for a number of food projects, including the housing-led project in Penarth, that's the Food Pod, and CF61 in Llantwit Major. Welsh Government awarded £33,447 to the Vale Glamorgan Council as part of their direct food support scheme for 2023-24. And utilising this fund, 11 local projects have been allocated funding, with the amounts varying from £2,000 to £5,000. Welsh Government's also made funding available to support food partnerships this year. The Vale received £97,000, and this money is being used to further develop Food Vale, the Vale Glamorgan's local food partnership, including exploring opportunities on how to create more resilience in the local food system and carrying out a rural Vale food pilot over the coming winter 23-24 to increase access to good quality affordable food in our more rural areas. We're also embarking on some work in response to the Audit Wales All Wales reports on tackling poverty to address some of the longer term issues our communities face. Through the Public Services Board, we're undertaking community engagement and asset mapping activities in our most deprived areas. This work is being taken forward by a dedicated community development worker funded through shared prosperity funding. And finally, we'll shortly be consulting on the Council's annual delivery plan for 2024-25. And the cost of living crisis is one of the 3 critical challenges in the plan. And this reflects the importance of the issue and that all services have a role to play in supporting our residents through this crisis. Thank you.
Supplemental, Councillor Selby. Lloyd Selby.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the response, Leader. It's good to hear the measures that the Council is taking to support residents and organisations seeking to support them through the continuing cost of living crisis. So just one question in relation to the small community grants and the measures that you've outlined that the Council is putting in place to support people. Is that information available on the Council's website? Is that the best place for people to look if they want more information about the support that's available?
The website has been updated for this year. In terms of is it the best place, I think we recognise we're not the only place that people go to for advice. So that's why we work with other agencies. So hopefully, I had somebody only this week that I'd contacted them to say, have you seen this grants pot? And they said, that's brilliant. Have you seen anything else? And I was able to signpost them into the Vale website. And so through our contacts within our communities, hopefully, we can help people to get to the right point of contact. And of course, I mean, we as members can also be those points of contact, so that if we are aware of people that need that support, we can either put them in touch with or signpost them to the website, or direct them, make the introductions to citizens advice, etc. But website is a good starting point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Lloyd Selby. Question 4 from Councillor Nick Hodges to the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and the Welsh Language. Councillor Birch, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hodges, for your timely question. Between the 23rd and the 17th of March 2023, the Council consulted on the draft Transgender Inclusion Toolkit, an update on the guidance which was first published in 2018. 8 months later, we haven't made that public, obviously. So there were 591 responses to the online survey in your response to your first question. Just over 50% of the responses were from parents. There were about 100 responses to the survey from pupils and school-based staff, which represents about 18% of the respondents. The consultation responses revised and updated equality impact assessments, and proposed amendments to the toolkit will be reported back to the relevant scrutiny committee in the new year, prior to the matter being referred back to the Cabinet for further consideration and determination. You'll understand that this has been a drawn-out process. There were lots of, we've just said there were lots of submissions received, and obviously it had to go through various processes in the Council, such as the legal department. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Birch.
Thank you, it does. It does.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
See, we can get answers when we ask sometimes.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 5. Councillor Dr. Ian Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood and Building Services. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your question. This is my response. As you are aware, the chargeable service this year started on the 1st July 2023 and was only a part-year arrangement. Thanks to the continuing efforts of our residents, there were 12,635 subscribers to the new service. This represents 20.72% of all householders in the Vale Glamorgan, excluding flats and apartments. You may recall that the target number of subscribers to meet the financial savings for 23-24 was 10,000. This resulted in an income level of 262,880. I will be presenting an update report on the subscription service and the changes to 3 weekly black bag collections at Cabinet on the 14th of December 2023. Therefore, the report will be referred to the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee in January 24 for its consideration. Further details of the service costs, savings, green waste collection rates and curbside black collections will be contained within that report.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I look forward to the report, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Question 6 from Councillor Mark Hooper to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood and Building Services. Councillor Wilson again, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hooper, for your question. This is my response. The primary responsibility for speed enforcement and other traffic offences rests with the police, as the council has no power to deal with speeding offences. It has always been expected that all operatives, contractors, buses and taxis working for or on behalf of the council abide by the laws of the road, and in doing so comply with the highway code, which promotes safety whilst also supporting a healthy, sustainable and efficient transport system. This includes Rule 124, which refers to legal speed limits for road wherever the posted speed limit might be. If the public have concerns with speed and traffic, the Wales Casualty Reduction Partnership Go Safe has also published a clear and concise explanation of how speed enforcement sites are adopted on its web pages dedicated to 20 miles per hour, which also contains frequently asked questions on 20 miles per hour and links to Welsh Government guidance and services on 20 miles per hour. Enforcement will be considered in line with Go Safe criteria based on the threat of risk and harm to road users. As the 20 miles per hour speed limit becomes a normality for road users, Go Safe will continue to focus its efforts on addressing community concerns, encouraging the formation of community speed watch groups and use emerging intelligence support enforcement in the most dangerous areas. That's my response.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Moving on to agenda item 19, urgent items. I have one urgent item under part 1 that I'm advised all members have been circulated with today. It's the agenda item is 16, Vale of Glamorgan Polling District and Places Review 2023, reference from Cabinet 30th of November 2023, and it was emailed to all members today. Now, the leader, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as mentioned, this is the review of Vale of Glamorgan Polling District and Places for 2023. It was discussed at Corporate Performance and Resources on the 15th of November and referred to Cabinet on the 30th of November from where it's been referred here. And as you might note, the use of urgency procedure was used to get it here. So that'll probably come up in our next full council meeting. Comments made during scrutiny on the whole focused around the geography of polling districts themselves rather than actual stations, and so there was discussion about Cowbridge, but and that'll be discussed in due course, although it's probably an idea to wait for the outcome of the ongoing community review before considering any minor changes to the makeup of polling districts. On a separate, so I'd suggest that we note the comments of Scrutiny Committee as a separate matter under review of the polling districts and stations. Comments were submitted by Councillor Ernest, so it's unfortunately hasn't been able to join us tonight, regarding the lack of a polling station in the actual Plymouth ward. It's one of those anomalies that although there is one in Quarterville, Mark, I'm just thinking. So no, I was going to say there's an anomaly that Plymouth voting stations weren't in Plymouth, but yes, there is one.
There's two. In fact.
There are two. Fine. Okay. Fine. And a request was made to assess whether there are any options that could be used in lieu of stations at Stanwell Road Baptist and All Saints Church, both of which are outside the ward, but they're very, very close to the other side of the road in effect. The matter, as I said, was discussed in corporate performances and resources, and that at that point it was discussed that despite best efforts, an alternate location couldn't be found. However, subsequently, it was established that Windsor Bowling Club in Robinswood Crescent in Penarth was an option. And it's having discussed it with the club, it's felt that can move forward. So accordingly, when it was reported to Cabinet, it was there was a recommendation made to the effect that for the Plymouth ward, that would be included, and that the following arrangements were proposed, and that was that the Lower Penarth Community Hall will continue to serve Pone District JJ0, that Courteville Community Centre continues to serve Pone District JK0, that Windsor Bowling Club will become a new polling station to serve Pone District JF0, which is lying immediately adjacent to the polling district, and the polling district JE0. The Stanwell Baptist Church continues to serve polling districts JD0, and that's St Augustine's only, and this has been used previously as a double station for St Augustine's and Plymouth. And the All Saints Church Hall will continue to serve polling district LA0, which is Stanwell ward only. And again, this previously had been a double station. I think it's sensible, though, that it represents a better spread of polling stations, which all lie within the ward. But I think that that we need to say that it should be reviewed in an ongoing manner, because the previous polling stations, although were just outside the ward, actually were probably better for access to public transport. So I think we need to make sure that we review it and see that there aren't any unintended consequences from moving the polling station to within the boundaries of the ward. But this has been referred to council for a final decision, so from our perspective, I would move that we note the views of the scrutiny committee, and that we agree the arrangements referred to in terms of the amended arrangements for Plymouth ward as set out. And I'd move.
Thank you, Leader.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So are we happy to accept this report? Everyone happy? Thank you. Report's accepted. Agenda item 17. I have no urgent items under part 2. Therefore, I will be bringing the meeting to a close, and I'd just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good night.